Chapter 1556. The Death Island was about 300,000 kilometers away from the island where the immortal city was. When Han Fei arrived, he found that thousands of human corpses were placed in a certain area. Wen Zhu secretly glanced at Han Fei and explained, "These should be the people who died this year. Because their bodies were intact, they were brought back. They had to wait for a while before they were brought to the immortal city to be eroded by the death energy. Then, they were brought to the Death Valley." Death Valley? Han Fei had certainly heard of this name. He had seen it with his own eyes. It was the place where the Death Bone Sun came from, which was guarded by the Jade Girl. Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Now, do you believe that I'm a human being?" Wen Zhu's face immediately turned red. She said in a low voice, "Previously, it was indeed unbelievable." Han Fei said with a smile, "Tell me about the Golden Boy and the Jade Girl and the island they were on. If I'm right, that island disappeared for a while more than 5 years ago, right?" Wen Zhu looked at Han Fei in surprise. "You know that too?" Han Fei casually grabbed the Death Bone Sun and played with it, saying leisurely, "Otherwise, where do you think I got this thing?" Wen Zhu had a complicated look on her face. "That makes sense. Han Fei got the Death Bone Sun in the outside world, so he didn't have to go to the Black Blood City and the Demon Beast Alliance." Wen Zhu said, "I don't know about the Golden Boy and the Jade Girl. But that island is called the Forbidden Island, which is an absolute forbidden area for humans. Except for the undead, ordinary people can't get close to it." "Oh. The Forbidden Island?" Han Fei couldn't help but be interested. There were many people who went to the island with him. Han Fei asked, "What kind of forbidden method?" He heard Wen Zhu said, "It is said that on that island there is often a bloody aura soaring to the sky, there is a great evil creature. There are also weird demon plants that hunt indiscriminately. There is also a grassland on that island that will disappear when you walk on it. Also, as you know, there is the legendary Death Valley on that island, which is a place to transform undead creatures." "On that island?" Wen Zhu said a lot of things in a loud voice. In the end, Wen Zhu said, "Most of us have never been to that island." "You? Venerable Han Fei, haven't you been there before?" Han Fei turned his head and glanced at Wen Zhu. "You can call me Han Fei or Marshal Han." Han Fei thought for a while and didn't pursue the matter. He found an empty space and sat on a rock. He took out a big pot and picked up an advanced explorer-level crystal dragon pill, which was a big lobster. Breaking the shell and taking out the meat. This series of actions could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. Gulp. Wen Zhu swallowed. Instead of looking at the lobster meat, she looked at the lobster shell of the shattered crystal dragon ball and said pitifully, "Master Han Fei. General Han, the lobster shell is broken just like that? Isn't that too much of a pity?" Han Fei froze for a moment and then remembered that long she was using intermediate divine weapons. It seemed like that thing was only at the level of this lobster's shell. Han Fei looked at Wen Zhu and asked, "Are you short of weapons?" Wen Zhu nodded. "Actually, we don't lack weapons. We just lack high-grade weapons. For example, Long Shi originally had a high-level divine weapon. Later, after she was seriously injured, she removed the ownership of the weapon and gave it to someone else." Han Fei was lost for words. "So, you're short of weapons?" Han Fei shook his head slightly, but he glanced at the lobster shell and curled his lips. Hoop. While cooking the hot pot, Han Fei raised his left hand and grabbed the lobster shell. With a clatter, the spiritual fire was boiling. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei casually threw out a few materials and then saw that the hot pot was still burning. Han Fei emptied his right hand, picked up a sledgehammer, and in an instant, he appeared 10,000 meters high in the sky. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. Wen Zhu only saw figures flashing in the sky and the sledgehammer striking horizontally. The void shook, and the ripples were like knives, splitting the sky and the earth, but none of them fell on the hot pot. About 10 minutes later, Han Fei swished and appeared in front of the hot pot. He casually threw a snake-shaped long whip to her. Manipulator, it's better to use a whip. Wen Zhu subconsciously took the long whip and felt a mountain-like gravity. The light and toughness of the whip were better than all the weapons she had ever touched. Wen Zhu looked at Han Fei in shock. Is this a high-quality divine weapon? Han Fei curled his lips. To be honest, ultra-quality divine weapons are indeed rare and require a lot of materials. The corpse of a venerable realm demon can only be refined into 1 to 5 ultra-quality divine weapons according to its realm. Let's wait for a while and find an opportunity to hunt a few of them first. Only then can I make some better weapons. Gulp. Wen Zhu swallowed. The venerable hunter is back. Just to make weapons? Are all the humans in the outside world so ferocious? She couldn't help but remember that Han Fei said he had killed more than 20 enemies and even killed half a king. Wen Zhu thought to herself, in the eyes of people like Han Fei, venerables are just weapons. Cuckoo, after a while, the hot pot was opened. Han Fei picked up a large piece of lobster meat and began to eat. It was not until he finished the 2 or 3 kilograms of meat in his hand that he remembered that there was someone next to him. He immediately said to Wen Zhu, sit down and eat 2 pieces too. It's millions of kilometers away. Even if they come at full speed, it will take at least half a day. As early as when Han Fei was barbecuing, Wen Zhu had already wanted to eat it. At this moment, Han Fei had confirmed that she was a human being and had become his leader. It should be okay to eat a few bites. When Wen Zhu picked up a piece of lobster meat and stuffed it into her mouth, she was so stunned that even her teeth stiffened. She looked at Han Fei in shock. What kind of divine taste is this? Han Fei didn't pay attention to Wen Zhu but looked at a corner of the void and said lightly, guys, don't you want to have a bite? Wen Zhu quickly raised her head and looked around, but found nothing at all. However, in the void, a voice came out, the undying. Have no sense of taste. This is also one of the prices. Han Fei shrugged slightly. It's a pity. By the way, can you send someone to the 10,000 Beast Island to send a message for me? An undying appeared beside Han Fei and said lightly, are you from the 10,000 Beast Island? Han Fei smiled and said, the problem is not where I come from. Send someone to the 10,000 Beast Island and tell Yang Xinji to put some pressure on them in the life and death gorge in the next few years. The black-robed undying asked, can you influence the decision of the Demon Beast Alliance? Han Fei raised his head and smiled at him. In this cage, the demon beasts are the natural allies of the human race. Since I'm here, I won't come in vain. As a general, no matter how strong he is, he won't fight alone in the face of a battle with a great disparity in strength. The black-robed undying pondered for a moment. Okay. However, Han Fei suddenly said, forget it. I'll use my own people later. The black-robed undying, Han Fei overestimated the speed of Long Shi and the others. Maybe the range of millions of kilometers was indeed relatively large, therefore, it took a full day for a large number of people to fly over. Swish 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 in the sky, a large number of strong masters descended like dumplings falling into a pot. These people were all explorers. Not a single one of them was below the explorer level. Han Fei also found that there were no children here. Then, logically speaking, the people below the explorer realm and children should be on the other side of the immortal city, heading for the battlefield. Han Fei was eating breakfast. He made himself a pot of crab roe soup. At this time, Hua Meng landed with a bang. The burly bald man said respectfully, Master Han Fei, everyone is in place. Because a lot of manpower has been used, it's a bit slow. Behind Hua Meng, in the open land, groups of people landed. These people all looked at Han Fei, who was sitting at the front and drinking soup. Slurp. Han Fei didn't even raise his head and said lightly, wait for everyone to arrive. Another 2 hours passed. The figures in the sky didn't stop. Then, Chen Yu and Long Shi landed one after another. When the 3 of them were all here, Han Fei knew that they were all here. At this moment, he had drunk half a pot of soup. Han Fei raised his head and glanced around. There were 18 junior venerables, 5 intermediate venerables, and 1 advanced venerable. Han Fei glanced at the advanced venerable and thought to himself, since the advanced venerable was sent to the rear, he must be seriously injured. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, he could use the great path of heavenly enlightenment now. Besides, his strength had grown to the intermediate venerable realm. Otherwise, how could he cure these people? It was impossible. Even now, with his vitality, it was impossible to cure all of these people. However, it was possible to spend some time hunting some sea demons and devour some vitality. After all, his void lines had been upgraded, and he could transform more vitality. While Han Fei was looking at these people were all looking at Han Fei. In their view, since Han Fei could cure Long Shi, Hua Meng, and Chen Yu, then the others must be easy to cure. Han Fei waved his hand and the soup pot in front of him was put away. Han Fei didn't get up and said leisurely, "I think you should already know. From today on, you're all my men. From now on, you can call me General Han. It doesn't matter if you don't know me. It doesn't matter if you think I'm an outsider. It doesn't matter if you don't trust me. But..." Han Fei's face changed, and his body was full of murderous intent. His voice was cold. "But you have to obey my orders unconditionally. Although I won't let you die, what I want to say is, even if I tell you to die, no one is allowed to object. Do you hear me?" Han Fei suddenly stood up, his eyes narrowed, and like a giant, he slowly stood up. Chapter 1557. Different from staying in the Demon Beast Alliance, Han Fei was very domineering in the territory of the human race. Han Fei firmly believed that he was going to become a king, the king of the human race, so he had to show the momentum that a king should have. If a commander wanted to directly and effectively control the overall situation, he had to have momentum. He had to suppress everyone with his momentum alone. Of course, when there was oppression, there would be resistance. Especially for a character like Han Fei who appeared out of nowhere. No one knew who he was, and no one even knew where he came from. So, as soon as Han Fei finished speaking, a venerable said, "If you want us to be your people, first, you need to cure us, and second, you have to tell us your background, right?" Han Fei glanced at the venerable and sneered. "An advanced venerable. You must be Lu Yuntian, right? Why? If I don't tell you my background, you won't follow me, will you?" When Han Fei was waiting for them on the Death Island, when Zhu had basically told him everything he needed to know. Lu Yuntian was the only advanced venerable at the rear. Because he was so seriously injured that his realm was almost lowered, he was ordered to retreat to the rear. Lu Yuntian narrowed his eyes and looked at Han Fei. He knew that Han Fei was very extraordinary. When Long Shi explained the situation to him, he knew that Han Fei must be very powerful. How could an intermediate venerable who could fight with peak-level combat power be an ordinary person? Han Fei grinned and said straightforwardly, "Of course I can tell you where I come from, but not now, fuse." Han Fei's pupils turned black and white. As soon as the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei's expression became extremely indifferent, as if he didn't want strangers to approach him. Han Fei glanced at the crowd. There were a total of 326,204 people, which was much less than the 500,000 people he expected. However, these people were at least explorers. In this way, they were extraordinarily strong. More than 300,000 explorers, how terrifying was this combat power? However, Han Fei would not be scared by this number. Because he knew that these people had accumulated over time, and those who couldn't make a breakthrough at all. Some people stopped at the junior explorer level, and some stopped at the intermediate explorer level. There wasn't even a 1,000th chance of becoming a venerable. Even if Yangming cured these people, only a few of them would be able to become venerable ones. However, even in such a group, there were still people lurking, back in the level 3 fishery, Han Fei had learned that it was possible for a sea demon to disguise as a human being and cultivate according to the methods of human beings. Especially those sea monsters with level 7 spiritual meridians and above, they were qualified to come into contact with the top-level demon transformation technique. What was even more terrifying than the human transformation technique was the combination of sea monsters and humans. This kind of thing could not be stopped even after being banned. The Scattered Stars Island used to be infiltrated by sea demons and couldn't be detected easily. Originally, Han Fei thought that there wouldn't be any sea demons pretending to be human beings, because there were half-king realm experts in the Immortal City after all. However, after a quick glance, Han Fei found a few guys who were not right. Swish! Han Fei disappeared without a trace. In the next second, when he reappeared, there were 4 more people around him. The 4 of them were dumbfounded. They didn't know when they were captured. In short, their brains suddenly went haywire, and then they appeared in the open space in front of the crowd. Han Fei's pressure descended, and the 4 of them all knelt on the ground. Immediately, someone shouted, "Bao Shan. Master Han Fei, why did you attack them?" Someone frowned. "Master, what do you mean?" All of a sudden, the people below the stage were in an uproar. Someone shouted, "Master Han Fei, you captured them without hesitation. If you don't have a reason today, we won't be convinced." One of them who was controlled by Han Fei shouted, "You're bullying the weak. Although you're a human grandmaster, you can't do anything to us. Although you are a human grandmaster, we won't be convinced." Another person echoed, "Yes, my compatriots, this person has never appeared in the Immortal City before. We have never seen him on the battlefield. It can be said that there is no such person in the Immortal City at all. Look at this person's attitude. Don't follow him." The other 2 also shouted angrily, "We won't accept it." Han Fei grinned. "You won't accept it?" Puff! Han Fei held a knife in his hand and slowly cut into a person's body inch by inch. Amidst the cries of alarm, that person's body actually began to change. His limbs were changing, and so was his lower body. Soon, he turned into a mermaid. Hiss! In an instant, the scene fell silent. In the void, a black-robed man appeared. This person reached out, pressed his hand on the person's body, and searched him up and down. The black-robed undying said in a hoarse voice, "Sea demon." At this moment, the bodies of the other 3 people trembled at the same time. Their souls seemed to be controlled and began to transform uncontrollably. Soon, they turned into 3 mermaids. At this moment, Han Fei loosened the void lines and let the 3 people go. Then he said with a smile, "Now, do you still accept it?" The 3 of them were horrified. "Who is this person? I hid myself perfectly. How could I be discovered so easily?" However, at the moment when Han Fei withdrew the void lines, the first thing the 3 people did was to self-destruct. The black-robed undying obviously wanted to take action, but seeing Han Fei's calm face, he knew he had a plan to deal with it. So he didn't move, wanting to see how Han Fei would do it. However, Han Fei didn't stop the 3 people from self-destructing at all. These 3 people were all half-venerables. Everyone could see that they were going to self-destruct. Seeing that Han Fei didn't stop them, they couldn't help but panic. Some people had even taken out their armor boxes, and many people had already taken protective measures. Bam! 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 However, when the 3 people self-destructed, spiritual light burst out from the ground within 100 meters. When many people exclaimed and even began to dodge, a large blue light array instantly enveloped the 3 people. The terrifying power of the explosion didn't shake the outside world at all. In front of hundreds of thousands of people, no one saw when Han Fei set up the array. Seeing this method of setting up the array, many spirit gatherers present gasped. Lu Yuntian and the other venerables also frowned. Only Long Shi, Hua Meng, and Qin Yu were indifferent, thinking, "You haven't seen his crazier side yet." Standing in front of the Immortal City, he dared to attack. This person is crazy. Han Fei smiled and said, "Look. Everything I tell you may be quickly leaked by these spies after I go to the battlefield. However, I still won't hide it from you. My name is Han Fei, and I come from outside the cage. You can call me General Han. In a year, I will take you to kill 10 sea demon venerables. If you can't do it, I will resign and treat you as free treatment. You won't suffer any losses. What do you think?" Wow! The crowd was in an uproar. Kill 10 sea demons in a year. Isn't this a joke? The Immortal City was weaker than Black Blood City. It had always been passive defense. If it weren't for the Demon Beast Alliance, with the strength of Black Blood City, it would have destroyed the Immortal City. Killing 10 sea demons hadn't happened in nearly 10,000 years. Even if the 10 sea demon venerables were killed, how many venerables would the human side lose? Lu Yuntian frowned. "Do you know what you are talking about?" Han Fei's eyes narrowed and his voice was cold. "I don't need you to question me. This is the first time. If there is a second time, I don't care who you are. Get out of here." Lu Yuntian's face turned red. In any case, he was an advanced venerable. Even if he was seriously injured, he was still an advanced venerable. At this moment, he was being scolded by a middle-level venerable and couldn't refute. At this moment, Lu Yuntian really wanted to slap Han Fei to death. However, when Lu Yuntian was extremely annoyed, he suddenly heard a voice in his mind, "From now on, you have to have a conflict with me. On the surface, you have to obey me, but behind my back, you have to resent me." Suddenly, Lu Yuntian stared at Han Fei and thought, "What does this mean?" Han Fei secretly said to him, "There's a little anger in your eyes. There's a traitor among the venerables. Do you want them to see it?" Lu Yuntian's heart tightened. There's a traitor among the venerables? How could it be? There were only so many human venerables in total. There were traitors among the venerables hiding in the rear camp? This horrified him. So, was Han Fei just putting on a show with him? Before Lu Yuntian could think more, Han Fei said, "Except for Long Shi, Hua Meng, and Chen Yu, all the venerables, come to 100 meters in front of me. Since I'm going to command you, I'll heal your injuries first. And I need to let you know whether I'm qualified to command you or not." Many people were looking at Lu Yuntian. After all, Han Fei was too strong and domineering, and Lu Yuntian was the strongest among them. Besides, he had a little conflict with Han Fei just now. "Humph," Lu Yuntian shouted, "Okay, I'd like to see how you can cure more than 300,000 of us by yourself." After that, Lu Yuntian took a step and came to 100 meters in front of Han Fei. The others watched quietly and followed Lu Yuntian, wanting to see Han Fei's ability. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. There were a total of 18 beginner venerables, 5 intermediate venerables, and 1 advanced venerable. Among them, excluding Long Shi and the other 2, there were a total of 21 venerables that needed to be treated. This was not a simple injection of vitality. Long Shi, Wen Zhu, and Wen Zhu's foundation was damaged, and Han Fei had lost nearly 80 years of vitality. The remaining venerables, including a high-rank venerable like Lu Yuntian, would require 700 to 800 years of life even if they were treated with the Heavenly Enlightenment Great Tao. However, Han Fei dared to bet that as long as he killed enough enemies, his vitality could be absorbed back. Han Fei had no doubt about his ability to kill enemies. Therefore, Han Fei raised his arms and said, "Tianqi, first update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter." Chapter 1558. When Han Fei raised his arms, the black-robed immortal next to Han Fei had disappeared. The Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique could restrain the immortals very much. At that moment, everyone looked up at the sky. A milky white halo fell from the sky. The beam of light enveloped this row of 21 venerables. Ah, many people subconsciously made a sound of comfort. The beam of light lasted for several minutes. Those who recovered first were naturally those at the beginner venerable realm. When the beam of light disappeared, these people were all shocked. Someone murmured, Miracle. The damage has been completely repaired. Someone exclaimed, not only the damage to the foundation has been repaired, but even the countless internal injuries left on the battlefield have also been recovered. Countless people saw the surprised expressions on the faces of the martial supremacies. The injuries of a venerable were something that even a demi-king couldn't do anything about. It was a damage to the foundation. Han Fei could even cure this. Wouldn't the treatment work of those below the venerable realm be even easier? After another 10 minutes, the 5 mid-level venerables also recovered, and they also looked shocked. However, one of them, although there was surprise in his eyes, his heart was very excited. Someone from the outside world had come, and it was such a terrifying figure. If this person could even repair the injuries of venerables, then the strength of the venerable realm in the immortal city would soar by at least 30%. This was the horror of a terrifying spirit-gatherer venerable. With this big shot, the human venerables could almost go crazy. Wang He. How are you? Has the damage to your foundation been repaired? A venerable next to him asked with a happy face. Wang He immediately smiled and said, of course, it's great. Even the internal injuries have been repaired. I'm just shocked. The venerable smiled and said, me too. Finally, it was Lu Yuntian. Advanced venerables and mid-level venerables were different after all. It took Han Fei nearly 100 years of vitality to repair all the internal injuries in his body. Han Fei cursed in his heart. How can these bastards get injured so easily? Luckily, there are only about 20 of them. If there were more than 100 of them, I'm afraid I would have exhausted all my vitality. To be honest, Han Fei was certainly not happy that Lu Yuntian opposed him just now. However, on one hand, considering that his wounds were caused by the battle against the sea demons, it was a contribution to mankind. On the other hand, Han Fei really wanted to put on a show. Therefore, it was good that Lu Yuntian could cooperate with him. If he couldn't, Han Fei wouldn't care about him anymore. Just now, after this round of treatment, Han Fei consumed about 650 years of vitality in total, which was less than he expected. Fortunately, he was walking on the heavenly enlightenment Tao. If it was in the past, he could only forcefully use the heaven awakening divine technique, which would consume at least twice as much vitality as now. With a lifespan of less than 1,500 years, these people could not be saved at all. After saving these people, Han Fei was a little tired. After all, Yangming was only a middle-rank venerable one, and his abilities were limited. However, the show of a new official taking office was not over yet. Han Fei said, now, tell me, and the 320,000 people present, have you recovered from the damage to your foundation? At this moment, the venerables were naturally happy. These people turned around and said to the crowd, this technique is miraculous. It can indeed repair the damage to the foundation. Someone said, although Marshal Han has just arrived, he must have consumed a lot of energy to cast the miraculous healing technique. Lu Yuntian clasped his fists. From the perspective of the entire human race in the immortal city, thank you. Humph. Han Fei didn't even look at Lu Yuntian, which made Lu Yuntian's face turn red again. This time, many venerables frowned, thinking, Lu Yuntian took the initiative to express his goodwill, but Han Fei didn't like it. However, Han Fei did have the capital to be arrogant. Besides, it was said that Han Fei was only an intermediate venerable. With a high-rank venerable realm expert like Lu Yuntian above him, it was natural for him to feel uncomfortable. Some people frowned. Han Fei saved people but didn't treat them well. This was not the demeanor of a marshal. Lu Yuntian was probably also very dissatisfied. However, Han Fei's healing technique was really amazing. This was no wonder the hundreds of thousands of people present were shocked. Even so, many people still doubted Han Fei's ability. With the means of an intermediate venerable, could he kill 10 venerables in a year? Was this possible? Of course, at this moment, what most people were paying attention to was not this place. Everyone hoped that Han Fei could heal them immediately. And Han Fei's voice rippled. Human compatriots, next, I will first heal your basic injuries to the best of my ability, but I will not immediately help you repair your foundation. To tell you the truth. To repair the foundation of more than 20 venerables, it consumed nearly 1,000 years of my vitality. Wow, many people sucked in a breath of cold air. A single healing technique that lasted only a few dozen breaths actually consumed 1,000 years of vitality. Was it so exaggerated? However, since these people could cultivate to the explorer realm, they naturally had their own plans. They thought about it carefully. Han Fei's words were probably true. First of all, among all the venerables in the entire immortal city, no one could directly repair vitality. Even if there were strong masters who had great means to help people repair the foundation damage, they could only do it for 1 or 2 people. Besides, casting it once would consume a lot of their vitality. There was really no one like Han Fei. Secondly, they were no fools after cultivating for so long. No matter how strong a spirit gatherer's great path was, how could it reach such a terrifying level without paying anything? There was no such thing as getting benefits for no reason at all. Looking at the crowd, Han Fei's voice was leisurely. But don't panic, it's nothing more than a little vitality. When I go to the front line and slaughter some sea demons, there will be a way to extract some vitality and make up for it. So, don't wait too long. I can help you recover to your peak. Now, everyone, stand where you are and don't move. The next moment, Han Fei's figure had already appeared in the crowd. Chilla. Chains of holy light descended and quickly spread out like an electric net. At one time, it could cover hundreds of people. Who had ever seen such a healing technique? After all, being a spirit gatherer was just a path. This Tao could make one's self-healing ability stronger and make one's life more tenacious after they became stronger. At the same time, it could also be of great benefit in terms of arrays and spiritual energy absorption. However, it didn't have such a terrifying group healing ability. Therefore, when the chains of holy light spread out like a spider web and enveloped a large number of people, the onlookers, the undying venerables hiding in the dark, and the more than 300,000 explorers present were all stunned. Long Shi murmured, with the power of one person, he saved half of the strong people in the city. If there had been such a person in the immortal city, how could the human race have come to this day? There were too many people who had the same idea as Long Shi. These people were all stunned by Han Fei's magical healing technique. However, although the holy light technique didn't need to overdraft vitality, it needed a lot of spiritual energy and spiritual power to support it. Han Fei didn't lack spiritual energy, but overconsumption of spiritual power would also make people tired. Therefore, Han Fei only treated about 50,000 people and was already extremely tired. Han Fei closed his eyes, visualized the god-scaring painting for a while, and then let out a sigh of relief. Han Fei shouted, "Okay. After all, I haven't reached my peak yet. I can't treat all of you at once. However, speed is the most important thing in war. My hunting plan has been decided. If you want to join me, then follow me to the front line. I won't force you. If you don't want to go, stay. If you want to follow me to kill the demons, follow me." Han Fei looked at a corner of the void, nodded slightly, and then looked at Long Shi. "Let's go. Lead the way." Han Fei said that those who didn't want to go could stay, but who would really stay? Han Fei's appearance had already proved his powerful healing technique. This meant that the damage to their foundation would inevitably be repaired. Besides, the power that Han Fei had shown so far was not weak. He could identify the undercover of the sea demons at a glance. Even the half-king didn't find that. Long Shi thought that he and Wenju just happened to meet Han Fei first. Above him, there were 5 intermediate venerables and Lu Yuntian, an advanced venerable. Han Fei actually asked him to lead the way. This was clearly not giving Lu Yuntian face. Lu Yuntian clenched his fists. However, he had received benefits from Han Fei, so at this moment, he couldn't lose his temper. Suddenly, several people cast a calm look at Lu Yuntian. Even 2 venerables walked up to Lu Yuntian. One of them said, old Lu. Another person patted Lu Yuntian on the shoulder and didn't speak. Han Fei had already taken the lead and flew out like Long Shi. Because there were a large number of explorers behind, these explorers didn't have the ability to resist the void cracks that appeared every once in a while. Therefore, these more than 300,000 people just took the normal route and didn't travel through the void. Long Shi said via voice transmission, Han. General Han, since there are sea demons undercover on the islands behind us, then, is it a bit inappropriate for us to set off in such a big way? These undercover sea demons are endless, and it's hard to hide their eyes and ears. Han Fei sensed that there were more than one vague perception scattered around. Han Fei said directly, "It doesn't matter. I just can't tolerate traitors under my command. But in fact, this kind of thing is hard to avoid. With so many of us traveling, we will eventually be discovered. So why don't we tell them openly? If traitors were useful, the Immortal City would have been destroyed long ago." In fact, the Immortal City had always been focused on defense. Because of the lack of manpower, it rarely took the initiative to attack. Therefore, the existence of these undercover sea demons was actually of no use at all. It was like a stubborn city. Although there were undercover spies in the city, they were not good enough. If they were all worried that they would be discovered, that wouldn't work. What they were afraid of was that they would reveal some important information. In fact, hundreds of thousands of troops would eventually be discovered if they marched like this. This was not an important piece of information. As long as those undercover spies couldn't grasp some important information, they couldn't play any role. Maybe some sea demon undercover spies would even convey some wrong information, which would be used by Han Fei. Han Fei flew all the way. When he was about 800,000 kilometers away from the Immortal City, a large number of islands appeared here. Han Fei scanned with his perception and found that the population on these islands became denser. In the direction of the Immortal City, there were only a few people on an island. In the direction of the front line of the Immortal City, there were all people living on the islands. On these islands, there were explorers, law enforcers, hidden fishers, and even cultivators below the level of explorer. There were almost people of all levels. Scanning with his perception, Han Fei found that there were no powerful marine creatures in these waters. However, there were many ordinary sea demons. This should be deliberately left by human beings for the younger generation to gain experience. In fact, most of these ordinary sea demons were not subordinates of the Black Blood Royal City. Only those who reached a certain level could be accepted by the Royal City. Han Fei looked at Long Shi and couldn't help asking, how many people usually live on such an island that is less than 1,000 kilometers long? Long Shi said, generally, there won't be too many people stationed on an island within 1,000 kilometers, about 500,000 people. With so many people, there is enough coastline for them to gain experience. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1559. Of course, Han Fei understood. When he first arrived at the Scattered Stars Island, it was about 1,800 kilometers wide and had a population of about 5 to 6 million. In fact, when the battle between the Scattered Stars Island and the sea demons was relatively peaceful, there weren't many troops stationed in the front line. Most people stayed in the center of the island. In fact, most of the people in the city had higher cultivation levels. As for the troops stationed at the front line, they needed the most experience. Compared with the Scattered Stars Island, the islands outside the Immortal City were actually much safer. In this way, they only needed to have a population of less than 500,000. Flying all the way, Han Fei saw 40 or 50 islands like this. Han Fei couldn't help but think that the total population of the Immortal City must be more than 100 million. However, even so, it was still too little. Therefore, they could only be forced into a corner by Black Blood City. Han Fei swept across the sky with 300,000 troops and only talked to Long Shi during the whole process. After flying for more than 3 million kilometers, Han Fei looked at Long Shi again. Where is the Forbidden Island? Long Shi was stunned for a long time. Forbidden Island? It was close to the front lines, about 500,000 kilometers away. Commander Han, we can't station ourselves on the Forbidden Island. Living there was bound to be a problem. There were too many threats on that island. As soon as we set foot on the island, there will be danger. Han Fei asked, are there any islands nearby? Long Shi immediately said, there is. Within 300,000 kilometers of the Forbidden Island, there were 5 large islands. If we go to the front lines, it would be best if we set up camp on an island about 100,000 kilometers away from the front lines. Only in this way can we effectively grasp the opportunity to act. Han Fei shook his head. Take me to the Forbidden Island. I want one of the nearby islands. Han Fei came with the permission of the Netherworld. He wanted an island, unconditionally. According to Nether's plan, it would be best for Han Fei to go to the island on the front line. With Han Fei's combat power at the peak level of the Venerable Realm, he would be able to guard one side. Even Long Shi and the others were stunned. Why did Han Fei ask Lord Netherworld for power so aggressively? However, when it came to the front line, you actually wanted an island that was 500,000 miles away from the front line? Han Fei didn't deliberately hide what he said. Therefore, Lu Yuntian and the other venerables could hear it. At this moment, these people were a little confused. Didn't they say that speed was the most important in war? Could it be that this was some sort of battle strategy? When a large group traveled, their speed was naturally slower. The front line had already received the news from the undead city. Therefore, when Han Fei's army flew within 1,000,000 kilometers of the front line, the major human islands had already begun to issue orders. Another 500,000 kilometers into the front line, Han Fei found that someone had been waiting on his route. Han Fei shouted, all troops, stop. Han Fei stepped on the void and crossed 100 kilometers with one step, arriving in front of those people. Behind Han Fei, only Long Shi followed. Waiting for Han Fei were 2 peak-level venerable powerhouses, an undying and a human female powerhouse. The woman's face was cold, but she had the demeanor of a powerhouse. His hair and robes fluttered in the wind. He wore green armor and clenched his fists. She wasn't the pretty type. Her face was slightly square, which matched her temperament perfectly. The woman looked at Han Fei carefully. Are you Han Fei? Han Fei smiled. Who are you? The woman raised her head slightly. The 726th Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei grinned. Me? Are you testing my memory? The history of the Scattered Stars Island doesn't run from the Age of Doom to the present, but from more than 25,000 years ago. Now, I'm the 886th Supreme Commander. The 726th, that is, 3,800 years ago. It's not too long ago. A female Supreme Commander. Hee, are you Qin Xiang? In the history of the Scattered Stars Island, there were many cases where women were in power. Among the more than 800 Supreme Commanders, if Han Fei remembered correctly, there were 269 female Supreme Commanders. When Han Fei tracked down Tang Yan's information, he read this part of the history, so he naturally remembered who Qin Xiang was. It could be said that the Supreme Commander of every generation was a hero of the generation. This woman, Qin Xiang, was most famous not when she was in office, but in her last battle. It was said that in a battle of powerhouses, she was surrounded. At that time, she was only a peak-level junior venerable, but she once defeated 5 sea demon venerables by herself. In the end, there were 3 cracks in the sky, and a rain of blood fell. Since then, Qin Xiang had never appeared again. Everyone thought that Qin Xiang was dead. However, her achievements were not forgotten. After all, it was 1 against 5, killing 2 great supremacies, which made the sea demons' hearts turn cold. But now it seemed that this was not the case. After this woman killed 3 venerables in a row, she finally escaped into the Wall of Death. That was more than 3,800 years ago. At that time, there were still many venerables. Han Fei recalled all this and smiled. I know you. Unfortunately, Your achievements are not as good as mine. Han Fei was as strong as ever. Facing Qin Xiang, he was still arrogant. Qin Xiang's eyes had already lit up when Han Fei called her name just now. However, with Han Fei's personality, was he really suitable to be the Supreme Commander? Qin Xiang said, I heard that you liberated the Scattered Stars Island. You mean the sea demons outside the Scattered Stars Island have been wiped out? That's tens of millions of sea demons, right? Han Fei sneered. I'm talking about the Venerables. Once the Venerables are dead, which sea demon dares to make trouble? They are just stepping stones for human experience. Qin Xiang frowned. There are many Venerables outside? I don't think so. How many Venerables can there be in the past 3,800 years? Everyone looked at Han Fei, waiting to see how Han Fei would answer. After all, they were the two successors of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island. They should know the Scattered Stars Island very well. Han Fei said, the Black Killer Snail King's projection arrived. 3 semi-king level projections, plus Chao Xian, Zi Yuchuan, Mo Lin, and more than 10. I killed them all. Why, are you interrogating me? Qin Xiang narrowed her eyes slightly. She had heard the news from the Undying. Not to mention how the people from the Black Blood City got out, even if she knew the names of Chao Xian and Zi Yuchuan, so what? What Qin Xiang was worried about was that the sea demons had the means to turn into humans, and Han Fei appeared too suddenly. He wanted to seize power and threatened to kill 10 Venerables. He also brought all the wounded on the other side of the Undying City. If something happened, the price would be so heavy that the Undying City couldn't afford it. Seeing Qin Xiang's expression, Han Fei smiled. Oh. It seems that you don't believe me. Qin Xiang said, if you want me to believe you, give me a reason. Since you can say my name, I admit that you must have something to do with the Scattered Stars Island. However, this is not enough. How do I know whether the Scattered Stars Island has been destroyed or not? How do I know whether you are a royal mermaid? Han Fei frowned. Qin Xiang knows the royal mermaid. It seems that the mermaids are perfect after transforming, just like Xia Shaochan. Just like Xia Shaochan, she was so perfect that it was easy for her to learn the 5 major human professions. Han Fei tilted his head and said, then why do you believe me? Qin Xiang shrugged. It depends on what other reasons you can give. Han Fei sneered. Do you think I have to ask for your permission? Qin Xiang said, it's about hundreds of thousands of people in the Undying City. Since you are the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island, it's only natural for you to explain your identity. Han Fei said indifferently, then let me see. How much do you know about the Scattered Stars Island? First of all, do you know the yin-yang sky? Qin Xiang frowned slightly. Where? Han Fei sneered. Above the 1,000-star city, where the central holy city can lead. Qin Xiang frowned even more. You mean the central holy city that no one has ever been able to enter? Han Fei said indifferently, I don't know the yin-yang sky. Do you know the Thug Academy? Qin Xiang nodded. I do. The head of the 8 academies, immortally, overshadowed the 1,000-star city alone. Han Fei thought to himself, Old Li is really something. He has already overshadowed the 1,000-star city 3,800 years ago. That's pretty good. Han Fei shrugged. Well, I'm from the Thug Academy. Qin Xiang asked, how can you prove it? Han Fei almost lost his temper. His eyelids twitching, he suddenly asked, how can you prove that you are Qin Xiang? Qin Xiang, Han Fei curled his lips. Just because you say that you are the 726th Supreme Commander. Next to him, the Undying said, Qin Xiang has been in the Undying City for 3,800 years and has killed more than 10 enemies. She can prove her identity. Han Fei sneered. The Black Killer Snail can prove my identity, but can you believe it? I once killed his projection with my own hands. Why don't you ask him and see how he reacts? If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being angry. Get out of my way. Qin Xiang and the Undying were not in a hurry. However, in Han Fei's team, Wang He's heart did a flip and he silently remembered it. Qin Xiang said, "Okay, you said you killed the projection of the Black Killer Snail King? We'll know after we try. Let's see how you, an intermediate venerable, can kill a half-king." Fuck, Han Fei was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that the Undying would persuade him. But when it came to the former Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island, it didn't make sense. There were more than 3,800 years between then and now. She hadn't experienced the era of slaughter caused by Tang Yen. She didn't know about the destruction of the Thug Academy either. Even if she knew, as long as she didn't believe it, she could still find countless reasons. Han Fei's aura soared crazily. Suddenly, Long Shi and the others were all horrified. Their bodies were trembling slightly. Han Fei's killing intent was boiling. Come on. Han Fei took a step and clasped at the void with one hand. A 300-kilometer floating cloud was clasped in Han Fei's hand, and thousands of knife shadows converged into a sword. At that moment, the sky and the earth lost their color and became dim. All around, countless venerables watching the battle were shocked. Is this a fucking intermediate venerable? Who the fuck is kidding me? Long Shi and the others were dumbfounded. Someone was dumbfounded. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. Oh, my God. Lu Yuntian's eyes widened. How could he take this attack? Qin Xiang was also shocked. Han Fei's attack was so terrifying that it even absorbed a massive amount of power around him. She shouted, "Are you crazy? Why are you fighting here?" Han Fei shouted, "The immortal city has been destroyed like this. Why can't I fight here?" Qin Xiang activated her Dao, and the invisible air around her fluctuated. It turned out that Qin Xiang's Dao was the power to control the air between heaven and earth. And this power was nothing more than the use of pressure. The void exploded crazily with a series of bangs. Venerable Qin Xiang's peak-level power burst out and blasted 7 times in a row before she finally shattered Han Fei's attack. Swish! However, in the next moment, a restriction spell was activated. A big stick flew across the sky and knocked on the heavenly gate, ignoring space and time. The distance of hundreds of kilometers was covered in an instant. How could Qin Xiang react in time? She was instantly blocked. In an instant, half of her body was blown off, leaving only half of her head and a complete golden arm. Han Fei took a look and sneered. Golden body? With just this little bit of golden body, you're nothing to me. Stop. Han Fei, stop. Han Fei, are you crazy? Do you want to kill your own people? Although the two were tens of thousands of meters high in the sky, their terrifying power shook the world and countless venerables rushed over. A demi-king crossed the void and stood in front of Han Fei. Lu Yuntian had been resisting the void storm with all his strength these days. What the hell, a single strike could directly crush any one of them into pieces. Humph. Han Fei snorted coldly. Prove this, prove that. In the end, it's just a matter of strength. Next time you talk to me, watch your words. Everyone, third. Asking for votes. Moi. End of this chapter. Chapter 1560. A middle-level venerable blew up a peak-level venerable with a punch and a stick. This kind of fantasy happened in front of everyone today. For a moment, all the onlookers fell silent. Long Shi, Lu Yuntian, and the others were all horrified. This Han Fei was like a god of slaughter. He could easily blow up a peak-level venerable. What about ordinary venerables? Long Shi couldn't help but recall the scene when he attacked Han Fei. From the beginning to the end, Han Fei just flicked his fingers. As for the explorers like Wen Zhu, they had long been dumbfounded. They didn't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing that their commander was such a tough character. Above the void, Qin Xiang's body gathered again. When she fully recovered, her face was full of shock. This man was so domineering. The combination of his combat skills was almost impeccable. He could even seal the void and block the Great Way. What kind of Great Way was this? If no one could believe that Han Fei could kill a half-king as a middle-level venerable, but now it seemed that it was not impossible. Chen Xiang was already a peak-level venerable, but she was blown up before Han Fei could even make 2 moves. If it weren't for the golden bones, she would have been blown into dust. Even when Han Fei saw a half-king undead standing in front of him, his voice was still fierce. Han Fei's cold voice echoed between heaven and earth. From now on, I'll lead an area alone. Don't talk to me like that again. If you have any doubts, please think about it first. Not everyone has the right to question me. Han Fei was strong, powerful, domineering, and fierce. Chen Xiang's face became gloomy. This person was indeed strong, but according to the normal selection criteria of the Scattered Stars Island, such a person shouldn't be chosen to be the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, right? Did something really happen in the outside world? The half-king undead said, "You're wrong. You came from the same place, so you didn't have to fight." Han Fei chuckled. We came from the same place, but people born in the same place are different. I won't hold you accountable for what happened today. Now, I want an island. I'll choose one near the Forbidden Island. The half-king undead also saw Han Fei's strength. To be honest, he was not sure if he could defeat Han Fei directly. After all, everyone had witnessed Han Fei's strength just now. Even if they could not defeat such an expert, if the other party only wanted to escape, how many people here would be able to capture him? Besides, Han Fei's Tao restrained the undying like them. The half-king was quite decisive. Han Fei was too aggressive in his actions and words, and no one knew what he was up to. However, Han Fei claimed that he would kill 10 of them within a year. Since he had already spoken such ruthless words, there was naturally no need to stop him. Everyone could afford to wait for a mere year. All they had to do was wait and see. Confronting Chen Xiang, Han Fei turned his head and glanced at Long Shi and the others. Let's go. At this moment, Han Fei had shown his super powerful means. Who dared to refute him? Besides, Han Fei's style was completely different from what Wen Zhu and the others had seen at the beginning. Not gentle at all. However, no one dared to resist this kind of strength. After Han Fei led the crowd away, many venerables flew over. Someone frowned. Is Grand Monarch Dust Fragrance hurt? Chen Xiang shook her head. This person's strength is indeed terrifying. Especially his strength, he is definitely at the half-king level. Someone said, this Han Fei showed a disdainful expression when he saw your golden bones. Does this mean that he has also embarked on this path? And he has gone quite far. Many people were tempted to hear this. This possibility was extremely high. The half-king Undying said, don't argue with this Han Fei. He came in a domineering manner and said that he would kill 10 venerables in a year. Just wait and see. Besides, his strength is not weak. In this way, our frontline battlefield is equivalent to being guarded by 4 half-kings, which can indeed be said to be a great increase in strength. Someone also said, Sister Xiang, don't argue with him now. I heard that this person's healing skills are unparalleled in the world, and he uses the legendary Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. Why don't you let him cure all the people he brought? Chen Xiang snorted. I'm not that petty. What I'm thinking is, this person is too domineering. Will he be obstinate? Is he a qualified commander? Someone wondered, doesn't he look like a commander? I think it's quite similar. Chen Xiang shook her head. No. His personality is too radical. As a commander, he needs to consider the life and death of millions of people. There are too many things to consider. In theory, this shouldn't be the case. That's why I have doubts. While Chen Xiang and the others were discussing Han Fei had led the crowd to fly around the Forbidden Island. There were 5 islands here that were close to the Forbidden Island because they were a certain distance from the front line. Therefore, on these 5 islands, there was only one peak-level venerable undying guarding them. The others were all explorers and law enforcers. In total, there were not many of them. Among them, there were only about tens of thousands of explorers and hundreds of thousands of law enforcers. At least, the group of people led by Han Fei could easily sweep these 5 islands. It could be seen that Han Fei was lucky to come to the Immortal City from the direction of the Beast Island. He happened to come to the rear of the human race and happened to meet these injured human powerhouses whose realms were definitely not low. Now, these people had all been recruited by him. Although Han Fei's way of recruiting people was too tough. However, as long as these people were recruited, Han Fei had his own ways to capture their trust. When Han Fei and the others arrived, the peak-level Venerable Undying appeared beside Han Fei and said, "My name is Yi Qian. I was appointed by Lord Netherworld to work for you." Han Fei nodded slightly. This was a matter of course. In any case, he was a newcomer, and they couldn't really give him power all at once. If he wanted to bring these people to the frontline battlefield, there would definitely be other strong powerhouses following them. After all, the people he led were also extremely important. Even if their foundation was damaged, they could reproduce and impart experience, right? Han Fei said, "Got it." After circling around, Han Fei finally chose an island only 120,000 kilometers away from the Forbidden Island. This island was enshrouded in blue light. What was a little puzzling was that this island was not the best of the 5 islands, but the worst of the 5 islands. The island protecting boundary was generally invisible. After the blessing of the Immortal City for tens of thousands of years, the island protecting boundary was basically perfect on a safe island. However, this island only had a radius of 800 kilometers. The forest was dilapidated, and part of the beach had been eroded. There were also volcanoes on the island. In the air, there were some tiny floating particles, which were not good. Han Fei immediately asked, "What's the name of this island?" Yi Qian said, "This is the Firestone Island. It got its name because some useless fire stones are produced on the island. Because there are few strong powerhouses near the Forbidden Island. So, there are a lot of marine creatures around. The closer you are to the Forbidden Island, the more marine creatures there are. So, some places have been damaged." Han Fei nodded and said, "Okay. We're going to this island. Everyone, station on the Firestone Island and clear the island." In fact, many people were puzzled when Han Fei chose this island. After all, Han Fei's purpose seemed to be the Forbidden Island. Did Han Fei choose this island because he wanted to go to the Forbidden Island? Among all of them, only Wen Zhu knew that Han Fei had been to the Forbidden Island once. That was when the Forbidden Island disappeared, and Han Fei had been there in the outside world. Because of Han Fei's strong personality, he didn't explain much to these people and seemed to disdain to explain. Han Fei shouted, "All those who have not recovered their foundation, station temporarily and are not allowed to leave the island." Long Shi, Qin Yu. Long Shi and Qin Yu cupped their hands. "General Han." Han Fei said, "During my absence, no one is allowed to leave the island without permission. Otherwise, you too will be held responsible." Han Fei said, "Hua Meng." The bald man cupped his hands. "General Han." Han Fei said, "Stay here. Later, I have something for you to do." Hua Meng was taken aback for a moment, but he obeyed without hesitation. Anyway, he believed that Han Fei was a real human powerhouse. The magic of the apocalyptic divine technique had already convinced him. And just now, the scene of Han Fei blowing up Qinxiang with 2 blows was still imprinted in his mind. But Hua Meng didn't know that the reason why Han Fei chose him was because of the choice of the navigator, not Han Fei's own choice. After giving the order, Han Fei looked at everyone else. "The others, move freely on the island and wait for my return." Then Han Fei looked at Yi Qian. "Later, come with me. I need to learn about the environment and the battle situation on the front line." Very quickly, Han Fei arranged everything, took Hua Meng to the side, and said, "Go to the 10,000 Beast Island, Han Fei and Yi Qian went directly to the front line. Yi Qian asked, "Are you going to hunt venerables?" The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. "I'm just going to watch the battlefield." Yi Qian immediately frowned and thought, what's the point of watching the battlefield? Or is the thinking of a commander-level figure different from that of a normal person? Thinking that Han Fei might want to observe something useful, Yi Qian didn't ask anything. Anyway, she had to keep an eye on Han Fei. About a moment later, when Han Fei came to the battlefield of the so-called Immortal City, he found that this place was very different from the battlefield in the Life and Death Gorge. The Life and Death Gorge only had a front line of more than 200,000 kilometers. Here, Han Fei asked and learned that the front line on the human side was actually more than 800,000 kilometers wide. There were only 7 islands in this 800,000-kilometer front line. However, these 7 islands were obviously artificially piled up. On each island, there were at least 1 or 2 peak-level venerables guarding it. Yi Qian said, "Here, there are a total of 3 half-king realm powerhouses, who are guarding the 2nd, 4th, and 6th islands respectively." Listening to Yi Qian's explanation, human beings used 7 islands to block the territory between human beings and sea demons and built the so-called land. Between the islands, the part under the sea was very shallow. It was clear that these islands had been set up very deliberately. They had made use of some special topography to separate the islands. After all, human beings still liked land. Fighting on land was what human beings were best at. Han Fei estimated that if the terrain allowed, human beings would definitely build this 800,000-kilometer front line into a complete and undivided island. Chapter 1561. When Han Fei stood at the front line of the Immortal City, he found that there were not many battles here. They were all people below the Explorer realm fighting against each other. Besides, many of these people were immortals. Seeing this situation, Han Fei immediately understood what was going on. After all, the battles in the cage had been going on for tens of thousands of years. Could it be said that the enemy and his side were inseparable? Those humans had all died a long time ago. Even Black Blood City couldn't withstand this kind of death. Therefore, the two sides were just in a stalemate. Without absolute certainty, they didn't launch a destructive war. Of course, there was another possibility, which was that the Black Blood City wanted to break out of the cage, so in the past hundreds of years, they didn't deliberately launch a large-scale war. At this time, although the front line in front of Han Fei was relatively long, the battle was much smaller than that on the Life and Death Gorge. On the Life and Death Gorge, there was a special battlefield. Usually, a few explorers could fight for a day. Of course, there were usually not many people who died. Sometimes, no one died for several days in a row. On the human side, there were mostly some hidden fishers and law enforcers fighting with marine creatures. This situation was a bit similar to the Scattered Stars Island. The whole island was a battlefront, and the strong were just guarding to prevent accidents. However, a little different from the Scattered Stars Island was that there were almost no particularly low-level marine creatures here. There were dangling fishers and hanging fishers. It couldn't be said that there weren't any, but there were very, very few of them. Of course, this was also because the outside environment was very harsh, and those low-level creatures usually had to hide in the seal. Han Fei was speechless when he saw this scene. If this was all there was to it, how could he slaughter the 10 Supremes if he couldn't even perform a big show? As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, Yi Qian said, "Don't be confused by the scene in front of you. Battles can't be carried out every day. There are battles, but it's impossible for hundreds of thousands of people to fight at once. The cage is not like the outside world. If a large-scale war breaks out, even if the Black Blood City wants to eat the Immortal City, it will inevitably suffer heavy losses. They don't dare to do so. They also have to consider their own rear." Han Fei asked, "When will there be a slightly larger battle?" Yi Qian replied, "There is an average of 1 venerable battle a month. Large-scale venerable battles were held once a year. In the past, it was rare for one to die in a year. In the past 2 years, it had increased slightly. On the other hand, battles between explorers happen every day. Although there aren't many human venerables, their fighting style is fierce. Therefore, the injured people you saw at the rear of the City of the Undying were all heavily injured in this kind of challenge. At this moment, Han Fei and Yi Qian came to the second island, where there were half-king realm immortals. The man looked at Han Fei from a distance, and Han Fei looked back at him from a distance without saying anything. Apart from the half-king, Han Fei sensed 7 or 8 venerables, all of whom were immortals. Some of them were strong, and some were weak, but none of them were at the peak of the venerable realm. In Han Fei's perception, the second island was basically full of immortals. How many venerables are there on the front line? Yi Qian said, if you add the venerable ones you brought back now, there are about 100 of them. However, in his heart, the old turtle said bluntly, bullshit, including the ones you brought, there are only 86 of them. Han Fei curled his lips slightly. That's more like what the old turtle said. Including about 30 venerables from the City of the Undying, the total number of venerables was only about 120. The number of venerables even exceeded that of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. However, this was not the Shuemu Heaven after all. The enemies here were not the Baibei Royal City or the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. The Black Blood City had a fake king. There were nearly 300 venerables, more than twice as many as yours. Han Fei observed all the way, and when he came to the fourth island, he was ready to stop. This was the most special island in Han Fei's view. Here, the immortals and humans built camps and lived on this island at the same time. At this moment, outside the battlefield, 2 explorers were fighting. When Han Fei saw it, the human powerhouse was exchanging lives with the half-mermaid powerhouse with a sword. Yes, what Han Fei saw was exchanging lives with the half-mermaid powerhouse. The human powerhouse only had half of the long sword left in his hand, and one of his arms was hanging down. The half-mermaid on the opposite side was not in a good situation either. His chest had been pierced. At this moment, both sides were staking everything on a single throw and were ready to risk their lives. However, at the last moment, the human powerhouse's crippled arm suddenly swung up. The hand left his body, turned into a long sword, and condensed into a sword light. Puchi. The half-mermaid powerhouse was cut in half. And the human powerhouse lost an arm and his chest was pierced, but he was still smiling crazily. Nice kill. Uncle De is awesome. See demon thieves, let's see if you can still be arrogant. On the human side, many onlookers were cheering. Seeing this scene, Yi Qian immediately said, are you going to save him? With your abilities, it shouldn't be very troublesome for you to save this person. Han Fei said with a smile, it's not troublesome, but it's relative. When I save people, I have to consume vitality. You can organize a group, or let the injured bring the life spirit fruit, or bring the explorer-level sirens to Flint Island. I can help all of them. Otherwise, how can I run across the 800,000 kilometers of coastline? I'm not here to save people, but to slaughter demons. Yi Qian's eyes lit up. Really? Han Fei said, of course. You can tell them about this now. Yi Qian immediately sent a voice transmission. After only a minute, with a swish, a half-king appeared next to Han Fei. Yi Qian said, Han Fei, this is Grand Venerable Ganfeng, a half-king. Ganfeng threw out more than 500 spiritual fruits casually and said, how many people can this save? Seeing that the man was serious and only talked about business in front of him, Han Fei naturally did the same. Who? Bam! 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 More than 500 spiritual fruits were shattered in an instant, turned into energy, and swallowed by Han Fei. Han Fei didn't have much hope in swallowing them. However, after swallowing them, Han Fei felt that his vitality had been restored to about 300 years. Han Fei's eyes immediately lit up. These spiritual fruits. Ganfeng said, after all, the immortal city governs thousands of kilometers of the sea. Although it doesn't produce many spiritual fruits, you know the harsh conditions in the cage. The spiritual fruits that can be born in such harsh conditions are naturally tenacious. Han Fei said straightforwardly, there are 3 beginner venerables, 2 intermediate venerables, or 1 advanced venerables. For explorers, there are 30 half venerables, 50 half venerables. Of course, it depends on how damaged they are and how much energy they consume. Ganfeng's eyelids twitched. How could a mere 500 spiritual fruits of life have such a great effect on Han Fei? This kind of spiritual fruit could only save a person's life at most. For explorers whose foundation was damaged, even if they ate 100 of them, they might not be able to recover from the damage. However, when it came to Han Fei, he had to heal 50 explorers. Gan Feng said, in 3 days, I will personally take some people to the Firestone Island with the spiritual fruits of life. Han Fei smiled. Don't you need me to save people today? Gan Feng nodded. 3 days later. Han Fei smiled. Okay. Have you finished the Battle of Venerables this month? Gan Feng and Yi Qian both looked at him. Then, Gan Feng shook her head. Not yet. Are you going to show up as soon as you come? Han Fei said casually, you have to keep your promise. However, I will not make a move today. Remember to inform me when the other party requests a venerable battle. It's best if you can help me make an appointment with a middle-grade venerable at the peak. Seeing that Gan Feng was puzzled, Han Fei smiled and said, it's not my style to kill a venerable in one go. Gan Feng and Yi Qian looked at each other and thought, Han Fei is really arrogant. From what he said, he probably wanted to kill 2 supremacies in one go. Han Fei's perception swept the surrounding 30,000 kilometers. Because his perception was not concealed, many people cast a puzzled look at him in an instant. At the same time, Han Fei said telepathically, I just want to meet you. In fact, because he hadn't seen these people face to face, he wasn't sure if there were spies among them. At that moment, the panorama navigator spun for a moment, but it didn't find any spies amongst these venerable realm experts, and Han Fei couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. As long as there were no spies. Han Fei had always suspected that there would also be spies on this island. Because among his subordinates, there was a person named Wang He who was suspicious. He had confirmed that since they were spies, there must be a way to deliver information or someone to help them. Seeing that they weren't on this island, Han Fei naturally greeted these venerables. Today, Black Blood City had lost a high-ranking explorer. After the battle, not only did the 2 sides not challenge each other, but they also gradually quieted down. Perhaps, in the eyes of many people, it was already very difficult to kill an opponent's advanced explorer in one day. However, in Han Fei's opinion, such a way of fighting could last for another 10,000 years. It was very likely that this was a conspiracy of Black Blood Royal City. Otherwise, if they really wanted to fight, would Black Blood Royal City only send these people? After watching this battle, Han Fei suddenly said, guys, do you mind if I go into the sea and hunt some explorer-level monsters to replenish my vitality? Gan Feng immediately frowned. Are you going deep into Black Blood City? Han Fei shook his head slightly. Why do you have to go deep into Black Blood City? I probably only need to hunt 100 or so explorers. 4 hours is enough for me to come back. Yi Qian looked at Gan Feng, and Gan Feng thought for a moment. Han Fei finally got people from the Immortal City, came to the front line, and even fought with Qin Xiang to prove his strength. He didn't have to go into the sea, did he? Even if Han Fei went to the sea, even if Han Fei went undercover and contacted the venerables of Black Blood City, what could he do? However, neither Gan Feng nor Qin Xiang dared to gamble. Gan Feng said, sorry, you're new here, and I dare not let you go to the sea alone. We're also being monitored and can't go with you. So, if you want to survive, you need explorer-level experts. I'll find a way. Han Fei nodded slightly. Indeed, if he asked to go to the sea and go deep into the territory of Black Blood City, many people would definitely feel uneasy. Han Fei nodded. Okay. There's still a long way to go. I'm not in a hurry. Chapter 1562. Seeing that there was no chance to help on the front line, Han Fei returned to the Firestone Island. For 3 days in a row, Han Fei healed these people. Yes, the first step was to heal with the holy light chains. If he used the apocalyptic divine technique on a large scale, he would definitely be overwhelmed. 3 days later. In front of Han Fei stood 50 explorers. Han Fei found 5 explorers, ranging from junior explorers to semi-venerables, to treat them. Each time, the number of people treated was 10. At this moment, 10 junior explorers stood in front of him, only to see 10 beams of light descending. In just a short span of 5 breaths, these sacred pillars of light had disappeared. No vitality was consumed. After entering the Wall of Death, this was the first time that Han Fei had used the apocalyptic divine technique on a small scale. In the past few times, he used the apocalyptic divine technique to treat venerables and a large number of explorers. Therefore, he consumed a lot of vitality. Before advancing to the venerable realm, Han Fei had always thought that using the apocalyptic divine technique required vitality. However, at this moment, when he used the apocalyptic divine technique on the junior explorers, not only did they recover extremely fast, but he also didn't need to consume any vitality. This was undoubtedly a great piece of news. Of these 320,000 people, 130,000 were beginner explorers. Originally, Han Fei was still having a headache. The battle on the front line was not fierce, so he could only rely on the spiritual fruits of life found by Gan Feng. Or, he could only go to the spiritual orchard on the Forbidden Island. However, the spiritual orchard was not full of spiritual fruits. Many of the fruits there were special lives. Besides, the main purpose of setting up the base on the Firestone Island was of course not the spiritual orchard, but the grassland. Han Fei had always felt that maybe, many people were wrong. In the cage, there were kings. However, no one could find this king. Back then, he encountered the barren grave on that grassland. When he entered it, Han Fei saw that terrifying figure. At that time, Han Fei wondered what realm this person was in. After all, when the 3 kings were observing from the outside, they didn't discover the secret of this barren grave at all. Even the old turtle couldn't describe the realm of that figure at that time. He couldn't even tell whether he was inside or outside the grave. Since he didn't need to consume much of his life force to return to the beginner level of explorer, things would be much easier. Of course, Han Fei waved his hand expressionlessly and said, "Intermediate explorer, come here." When the second batch of 10 intermediate explorers walked up to Han Fei, they were still a little uneasy. Holy light surged on Han Fei's body, followed by the heavenly revelation. This time, Han Fei was surprised to find that it only took him less than 2 years to heal 10 intermediate explorers. To be precise, it was about 1.5 years. This consumption was also not considered high. However, it wasn't a small amount. If that was the case, healing 10,000 intermediate explorers would require 1,500 years of life force. Even this consumption was not something he could afford. Therefore, he still needed Gan Feng to provide him with enough spiritual fruits of life. After a while, he tried them one by one. After testing, the amount of life force consumed to heal those above the intermediate explorer rank began to soar. 10 advanced explorers, 5 years worth of life. 10 peak-level explorers needed 12 years to live. 10 demigods needed 20 years to live. This meant that it would take about 2 years of vitality to restore the foundation of a demigod with the great path of heavenly revelation. In this way, to heal a total of 50 explorers today, Han Fei only consumed about 38 years of vitality. This was the difference between the explorer realm and the venerable realm. 38 years of vitality was probably only enough to restore the foundation of an intermediate venerable. These healed explorers only felt that their state had been restored to its peak. It was really as amazing as the great venerables said. These explorers who were healed by Han Fei looked at Han Fei in a different way. If Han Fei was tough before, everyone would tremble with fear when they saw him. But now, Han Fei didn't look fierce at all after treating people for the past few days. Therefore, everyone was secretly guessing and discussing that Han Fei might only be so tough and domineering when he regarded himself as the supreme commander in a battle. On normal days, he even looked a little sunny. "Thank you, General Han, for healing us." The 40 or 50 explorers all cupped their hands. Then, one of them even took out a sea-swallowing seashell. "Well, General Han, we know that healing the damage to your foundation requires your vitality. We heard that life-type spiritual fruits can help you restore vitality. I've collected a little here, only about 30 of them. This may be a little, but we didn't know how to accumulate spiritual fruits before, so we just thought they were disposable consumables. So, when we can't absorb spiritual energy fast enough during the war, we just use them." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Okay. Just leave them. I'll take them." These more than 30 spiritual fruits suddenly floated in the air. In the next moment, they suddenly shattered. Han Fei opened his mouth and sucked them up in one gulp. The explorers looked at each other in shock. Han Fei felt that he had recovered about 19 years of vitality. It was better than nothing. It was equivalent to recovering 50 people with 19 years of vitality. This price was worth it. When he mentioned it to Gan Feng before, it was only a preliminary estimate, so he naturally wanted to deduct part of the commission. He couldn't tell Gan Feng, "If you give me 300 years of vitality, I will save at least 100 people for you." In that case, he would only treat the people on the front line. How could he save the people on his side? Now, it had been proved that even if he saved 50 semi-venerables, it would only consume 100 years of vitality. If he only saved people below the semi-venerable level, the consumption would be even lower. Suddenly, the old turtle said, "Han Fei, boy. I always feel that since you can use the combat power of a peak-level venerable, why can't your Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique be a level higher? If you use the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique with the strength of a peak-level venerable, will the effect be better? Or could it be that your great Tao can only increase your strength?" Han Fei's heart did a flip. Yes, he had never thought of using his Tao on the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. In fact, he didn't intend to practice the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique at all. After all, he didn't know which powerful figure was behind this scheme. He was waiting to harvest him. Including the 4 major professions of human beings. Obviously, behind these, there were powerful figures waiting to harvest. However, his Tao could be switched and he could completely ignore this. Therefore, Han Fei was reassured. However, although he was not afraid of being harvested by a powerful figure, the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique could not be deduced and could only be comprehended. After being reminded by the old turtle, Han Fei recalled the third effect of the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique: those who practice this Tao will have their lifespan doubled. The effect of life overdraft will gradually decrease with the growth of strength. Generally speaking, the lifespan of a venerable will begin to decline after 5,000 years. To live to 10,000 years. It was already very difficult. However, if he walked on the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique, he would have a lifespan of 10,000 years. Besides, the effect of casting the technique was more than twice as good as before. According to the growth of his strength, the consumption of each use would only be lower and lower. Then, he could indeed try to use the effect of his Jasper Stone Bridge on the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. With this thought in mind, Han Fei's perception swept out, and with a swish, he entered his mansion. In fact, it was just a casually built wooden house, surrounded by layers of seals. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, the Jasper Stone Bridge appeared. Then, Han Fei walked up. This time, Han Fei's thought was to increase the effect of the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique by 3 times. Because it was the first time he had used this effect, he had to walk on the Jasper Stone Bridge. However, it was easy to get on the bridge, but when he got off the bridge to the 5th floor, in addition to the pressure, there was also a milky white halo appearing in front of him. Han Fei was shocked to discover that this was a kind of Tao, an unknown kind of Tao belonging to the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. Han Fei immediately wanted to absorb these Taoist auras. However, they were not useful to him at all. The road of 3 times the effect couldn't be taken in the end. Being able to overcome the limit of 3 times the combat power didn't mean that he could also cross 3 times the distance on another Dao. Han Fei failed gloriously. However, there were a total of 8 steps, and he had already gone down 5 floors. There was no need to go to the 6th floor. Han Fei thought in his mind and started again. The second time, 2. 5 times the effect, he couldn't go down to the 8th floor. In the end, the effect Han Fei obtained was 2. 3 times. But even so, Han Fei was already very happy. This meant that after consuming 38 years of vitality, it was possible for him to save 115 people. Suddenly, Han Fei frowned. Someone is coming. The array was opened, and Han Fei walked out of the mansion, only to see that Yi Qian and Gan Feng had already arrived. When he saw Gan Feng, Han Fei perceived and found that more than 30,000 people had come hundreds of kilometers away. Gan Feng said, "The ones I brought all suffered minor damage to their foundations. It's not very serious. They are all explorers. There may be a lot of people, but I have collected a total of 31,820 spiritual fruits. For the time being. It may not be enough, but I'll heal as many as I can." Han Fei said lightly, "I'll go and see the extent of their injuries." Han Fei reached out and took Gan Feng's Sun Moon shell. In one step, he came to those explorers. Gan Feng and Yi Qian arrived almost at the same time as Han Fei. After all, the distance was too close. For these people, it was not a distance at all. Han Fei glanced at them. Among these people, 50% were junior explorers, 30% were intermediate explorers, and only 10% were advanced explorers and peak-level explorers. There were only 282 semi-venerables. Han Fei glanced at Gan Feng and said, "A slight injury and a major damage to the foundation are 2 different things. Let me test it first." Gan Feng nodded, and Han Fei shouted, "From the junior venerable to the semi-venerable, 20 people each come forward." These explorers knew that they were here for treatment. However, there were still some people who were puzzled. Even the venerables couldn't cure the foundation damage. Even the spirit gatherer venerables could only repair the foundation one by one, and they couldn't guarantee a complete recovery. Could Han Fei do it? Many people didn't even know Han Fei. After all, this venerable was extremely strange to them. Some people thought, "Is there a hidden venerable behind us?" Soon, 100 people gathered. On Han Fei's body, a milky white halo surged. In the next moment, more than 100 holy beams of light fell from the sky. The momentum of these people was quickly recovering. The slowest one only took 2 minutes, and the beam of light on his body disappeared. And the damage to their foundation had been completely healed. It was also the first time that Gan Feng had seen Han Fei use the apocalyptic divine technique. She was surprised and pleasantly surprised. With this person, the combat power of the human race would soar by at least 30%. Han Fei found that the damage to the foundation of these people was indeed not serious, and it was easier to repair it. He thought that after the effect of the apocalyptic divine technique was doubled, it would take him about 35 years of vitality. But the result was different. He only used 20 years of vitality, which was much better than he expected. And there were 20 semi-venerables in the group of healers just now. In fact, there were less than 3,000 people in the 3 levels of advanced explorers, peak-level explorers, and semi-venerables. In this way, in fact, he only needed to consume about 2,500 years of vitality to cure all these people. And the spiritual fruits that Gan Feng gave him, if they were all of the quality of the previous day, could provide him with at least more than 18,000 years of vitality. In this way, he made a big profit. Han Fei immediately said, "Their damage is not serious enough." 100 people consumed a total of more than 60 years of vitality. Once the semi-venerables are cured, the rest are even easier. If they are all at this level, they can all return to the battlefield in 3 days. Gan Feng's aura fluctuated, and she stared at Han Fei with widened eyes. Really? Han Fei nodded. Of course. I won't return the spiritual fruits. I still have a lot of people waiting for them. Chapter 1563. Han Fei teased. After all, a half-king realm expert naturally knew how much benefit the spiritual fruits he brought could bring. After hearing Han Fei's teasing, Gan Feng let out a long sigh of relief and thought to himself, I've also calculated. Even if Han Fei had some reservations, he couldn't have more than 5,000 spiritual fruits left. Even so, Han Fei was already too amazing. Treating more than 30,000 people was like a piece of cake to him. Was this the legendary path of the King of Humanity? Or, was Han Fei really the reincarnation of the King of Humanity? At this moment, Gan Feng wasn't quite sure. She brought 30,000 people, and Han Fei's side had lost 320,000 people. In short, they were all on the same side, so of course he would provide as many spiritual fruits as he could. Gan Feng said in a relaxed mood, no problem. In another 3 days, I'll send another 20,000 spiritual fruits. In that case, I'll be in trouble. Han Fei looked at Gan Feng. Among these people, I think some of them are suspicious. What do you think? Gan Feng smiled faintly. It doesn't matter. I know what to do. Hearing Gan Feng's words, Han Fei didn't ask further. There were spies among these people, and Gan Feng obviously knew who they were. To Han Fei's surprise, there were really a lot of spies in this cage. Perhaps the mermaids and mermen of Black Blood City didn't have the ability to turn into beasts. However, they were very good at turning into humans. This might have something to do with the cultivation techniques they practiced. After Gan Feng left, Han Fei completely turned into a doctor. On the first day, tens of thousands of holy pillars of light descended, shocking everyone on the island. Many people came to watch, wanting to see Han Fei's amazing healing divine technique. During this period, Han Fei found a few spies secretly whispering to each other, but Wang He remained motionless and didn't intend to contact other spies at all. Wang He was not an idiot. Since Han Fei could easily identify the explorer spies on the Island of Death, then none of these explorer spies would be able to escape his detection. These people must have been recorded in a small notebook, but Han Fei didn't mention it. As for why he didn't mention it, that was easy to understand. After all, these people were all Gan Feng's subordinates. If he had to say it, he would say it to Gan Feng. Now that he knew who the spy was, he could make use of it. This kind of thing had happened more than once or twice in the conflict between Black Blood City and Immortal City. Therefore, Wang He would never expose himself under such circumstances. Treating tens of thousands of people a day, this kind of terrifying healing ability had made Han Fei a legend. Throughout the history of the cage, no spirit gatherer had ever had 1% of Han Fei's magical ability. Those who had been saved by Han Fei had completely changed their mentality. After they were cured, they looked at Han Fei as if they were looking at their idol. Therefore, on this day, Han Fei felt that the power of wish was growing. Although there were only a few people, these people were very strong, so even though there were not many of them, Han Fei could still feel the power of wish. This was also very much needed for Han Fei. Actually, the power of will was secondary, as it would eventually be used up. The key was the will of the people. This was what Han Fei needed. The next day, just like the day before, Han Fei treated tens of thousands of people in less than 2 hours. On the third day, it was still the same. 3 days later, Gan Feng delivered another 20,000 spirit fruits, just as he had said. In addition to spiritual fruits, he also gave Han Fei 39 explorer-level sea creatures. From the fourth day, Han Fei began to treat the people he brought to the Firestone Island. These people also knew that Han Fei's treatment required vitality, so under the organization of Long Shi and the others, everyone pooled their resources and gave Han Fei about 3,000 spiritual fruits of life. Although they knew that more than 3,000 spiritual fruits were just a drop in the bucket, this was already the limit of their ability. After all, this was what they had saved up in the past. Some people felt that it was useless to eat them, so they simply didn't eat them. Some people were prepared to use them to save their lives. Since Han Fei now had such a magical healing technique, there was no need to keep these spiritual fruits. 7 days later, on Ganfeng's side, people continued to send spiritual fruits and some explorer-level sea demonic beasts. These were all willingly given. It could be seen that Han Fei's treatment of everyone was really popular. On Han Fei's side, 50,000 people had been treated one after another. Although only a part of them had been cured and it was still far from Han Fei's promise, this had already shocked countless people. Because of Han Fei's terrifying healing technique, many people who had been cured clamored to go out to fight, hunt sea demons, and look for spiritual fruits every day, but they were all rejected by Han Fei. On this day, more than 50,000 people waited outside Han Fei's mansion to petition. They knew that Han Fei should have no resources in his hands. At this time, they couldn't expect the resources of the entire frontline to be sent to the Firestone Island, so they could only fight for them themselves. Swish! Suddenly, the void shook, and Yi Qian appeared. Countless people bowed their heads. Grand Venerable Yi Qian. Yi Qian didn't hesitate and looked directly at Han Fei's hut. The venerable battle has begun. Wow, the array disappeared, and Han Fei appeared directly in front of everyone with a smile on his face. He said lightly, "I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Han Fei said, "No one is allowed to leave the island without my order. When I come back from hunting 2 venerables, I'll find a way to repair your foundation." Hearing Han Fei's words, Wang He was anxious. He had seen Han Fei's strength. What the hell was a mid-level venerable? That was someone who could slaughter a half-king. However, he was only a mid-level venerable on the surface. Therefore, everyone was very confident that Han Fei would hunt 2 venerables. After all, they had all seen Han Fei's skills. Wang He looked around and thought, someone will propose to go together, right? Sure enough, when Wang He was about to speak, someone said, "General Han, do we need to go and help in the venerable battle?" Wang He thought that this suggestion was wrong, so he said, "General Han, there are too few venerables on the front line, which has always been a problem of the Immortal City. Every time there is a venerable battle, the sea demons measure the strength of our side. Let's go and help to boost the morale of the Immortal City." After Wang He said that, even Yi Qian looked at Han Fei. What he said was right. A large part of the reason why Black Blood City hadn't attacked Immortal City was because of the pressure from the Demon Beast Alliance. Over the years, the number of venerables on the front line of the Immortal City had gradually decreased, which had attracted the attention of Black Blood City. However, Han Fei sneered. "Have you forgotten the plan to kill the venerables? Not to mention that the war between the 2 sides hasn't started yet. Even if the war starts, you can still be regarded as a surprise force. Everyone, stay at Firestone Island. Without my order, no one is allowed to leave the island." At that moment, Wang He wanted to say something. However, Han Fei said in a low voice, "After I make a decision, don't try to disobey my military order." Han Fei glanced at Wang He and the other venerables. His power made everyone a little scared. Yes, these days, Han Fei had been treating patients and recovering his spiritual power, so they almost forgot Han Fei's character. Wang He sighed in his heart. Unfortunately, a venerable from Black Blood City is going to die. It seems that I have to do something. I can't be so passive all the time. However, Han Fei was too domineering and didn't give me a chance. On the way, Yi Qian asked, "You know, your existence can't be hidden." In fact, there were even spies trying to find ways to leak information. In the war in the past few days, many spies wanted to go out, but none of them were selected. If we continue to suppress them, they may be alarmed. Han Fei grinned and said, "As soon as I show up, the Black Killer Snail King will definitely be alerted, and the front line of the Immortal City will immediately be under pressure. Of course, the news of my arrival will be released. But when will it be released? Who will release it? I have to decide." Because the journey was very short, Han Fei and Yi Qian had arrived at the 4th island before they had time to say a few words. At this moment, outside the front line, a sea demon venerable was clamoring, "What? You haven't fought a battle of venerables for such a long time. Do you all think that Blackblood City has forgotten your existence? Does anyone dare to come out and fight?" A sea demon venerable set up a battle array and said coldly, "If no one comes out in 100 seconds, don't blame me for challenging you. It's okay if you don't want to fight. As long as the immortal city dares to fight, I will satisfy you." Ganfeng's subordinates. Someone yelled, "How arrogant! Don't forget that I almost killed one of your venerables in the last battle. It's only been a month, and you dare to be so arrogant. Let me kill you." Someone yelled, "I'll do it. Boss Gan, I'll do it. I've reached a bottleneck recently. This is a good opportunity for me to make a breakthrough." Suddenly, a voice came from afar. "I'll do it." The human venerables looked back and were all surprised to see Han Fei. Now, everyone in the venerable realm in the immortal city knew Han Fei. Who didn't know him? Even the explorers whose foundations had been repaired by Han Fei had begun to talk about Han Fei. He repaired the foundations of 30,000 people in 3 days. Such a terrifying spirit gatherer was the first in the history of the cage. Besides, the fact that Han Fei blew up Qin Xiang with 2 punches was really shocking. It was hard not to know. Therefore, as soon as Han Fei spoke, all the venerables stopped talking. Besides, these people all knew in their hearts that some venerables were going to die today. However, they still couldn't understand why Han Fei made a promise to kill 10 venerables within a year. You're strong enough, but you keep your words to yourself. Every time you fight, you pretend to barely win, and it's possible to kill 10 venerables within 100 years. However, if you say it out loud, how can the enemy's spies not know? In fact, they didn't know Han Fei's real purpose at all. Han Fei came to the immortal city with 3 plans: first, to harvest a wave of venerables; second, to check out the Forbidden Island; and third, to sneak into Blackblood City. At this moment, Han Fei was working hard to realize the first plan. With a swish, Han Fei stood in front of the battlefield. Han Fei walked forward step by step. "Maybe you don't know me, but let me fight in today's venerable battle." Chapter 1564. In front of everyone, Han Fei walked out valiantly and energetically. The realm of an intermediate venerable didn't arouse the slightest suspicion. Han Fei's original realm was only so high. If he forcibly improved it, there was a chance that he could be promoted to the peak of the intermediate venerable. However, he would definitely be stuck in this realm for decades, which was not worth it. Looking at Han Fei coming up, the sea demons were also a little confused. After all, they had fought against the immortal city for tens of thousands of years. If a new venerable was born in the immortal city, he should have shown up on the front line. This Han Fei was not a junior venerable at all, and they had never seen him before. Therefore, many sea demons felt very strange. If Han Fei was a junior venerable, the sea demons might not take him seriously. That meant that he had just become a venerable and was on the front line for the first time. Generally speaking, this kind of situation often happened in the long history. After all, someone would always advance to the venerable realm. However, this Han Fei was an intermediate venerable, which was puzzling. How could there be an unknown intermediate venerable on the human side? Where did he come from? Why didn't the undercover report his information? At this moment, as soon as Han Fei came up, he immediately attracted the attention of many sea demons. A sea demon venerable shouted, "Hey! A newcomer? Who are you? I don't remember there being a person like you in the immortal city." Han Fei tilted his head and looked at the person who spoke. "You underestimate the immortal city if you know everything. Besides, who do you think you are? Do you think you're qualified to know me? Bastard! You're courting death." Han Fei smiled contemptuously. "All these years, I haven't seen your Blackblood City take advantage of the immortal city. You said I'm courting death? Do you dare to fight me? Why not? Wait." Just as the sea demon was about to come up, a half-king suddenly spoke. This person sneered. Young man, you need to hone yourself. A newcomer who hasn't reached the peak of the intermediate level can't understand the power of the peak. You Aohai, go and meet this person. Under the half-king's tent, a half-mermaid who had 3 bulges on his head and a strong body stood out with 2 big spears in his hands. You Aohai, this name sounded quite domineering. At this moment, You Aohai bared his fangs and shouted, Human, it's not too late for you to admit defeat and scram. Otherwise, we won't be able to go back. Han Fei's face slightly changed, and he looked back at Gan Feng. This action seemed to be seeking Gan Feng's opinion. Gan Feng naturally understood what Han Fei meant. In front of everyone, she nodded slightly at Han Fei. Han Fei smiled, then turned around and said with a smile, How can the glory of the human race be lost in my hands? Fight. At this moment, the sea demons didn't know that the 3 half-king realm experts of the immortal city were closely monitoring the situation. Apart from Han Fei's subordinates, only the venerables knew that Han Fei had defeated Qin Xiang. At this moment, Han Fei's subordinates were all on the Firestone Island. In that case, if something unexpected were to happen, it would mean that there was a traitor among the venerable realm experts. In fact, Han Fei was confident to identify traitors in the venerable realm. However, asking him to find them one by one? Obviously, this was not very realistic. After all, what was a venerable one? Did they have nothing better to do? You're a newcomer and you want to meet me. Do I have to meet you? Therefore, Han Fei did not intend to meet all the venerables one by one. That was really unrealistic. If he did so, it would be easy to alert the enemy. Although there were many sea demon spies among those explorers. However, these people wanted to tip off the venerable realm. It was much more difficult than being a venerable. As long as they were not allowed to go to the battlefield, they wouldn't be able to send any news out unless they wanted to die. At this time, Han Fei was not worried that there would be any problems in this battle. Earlier, after Han Fei treated the wounded, he specially met Gan Feng. The 2 of them had reached an agreement on the issue of spies. Gan Feng exchanged the information she had with Han Fei at that time. Then, at the moment when Han Fei entered the battlefield, the battle was like an arrow on the bowstring. The 2 sides were about to fight. Suddenly, on the human side, a half-venerable realm expert suddenly burst out and roared, This person is the strongest spirit gatherer of the human race, he saved, BAM. Before this person finished speaking, a big hand had already grasped him. Bang! A loud explosion was heard, and the surrounding sound was quickly isolated. A half-venerable was actually a spy and directly sacrificed himself to expose Han Fei's identity. Gan Feng's face suddenly changed and she glanced around, scaring countless people. Someone secretly cursed, Fuck, how can there be a spy among the half-venerables? Someone was shocked. Zhou Yu is my good friend. How did he become a spy? It's over, this time they will definitely find out about me. When the half-venerable realm expert was angry, the whole scene fell silent. At this moment, even if another half-venerable realm expert wanted to shout, he would probably be squeezed to death by the half-venerable realm expert. On the sea demon side, the half-venerable realm expert sat on the throne of waves, looking at the field coldly. The strongest spirit gatherer of the human race? I see. No wonder this person has never shown up in front of others, because this kind of person doesn't need to show up at all. However, this half-venerable realm expert was slightly puzzled. The strongest spirit gatherer is just a spirit gatherer. Why does a spirit gatherer have to fight in front of others? Although he couldn't tell what was different about Han Fei, the half-venerable realm expert still reminded him. However, the half-king still reminded, You Aohai, don't hold back. Go all out. Han Fei's face became gloomy, but he was overjoyed in his heart. Although he didn't intend to hide his identity for long, Gan Feng's operation was indeed very good. As soon as Yu Aohai heard the half-venerable realm expert's order, he immediately roared and jumped up. Lightning fell from the sky and poured into 2 big spears, stabbing directly at Han Fei. Behind the humans, at the moment when Yu Aohai jumped up, a venerable reminded Han Fei, "Be careful, those are thunder spears, which can turn into lightning." However, Han Fei didn't move. Since he had come out as a spirit gatherer, of course he had to put on a show. Han Fei raised one hand, and a large array of more than 10 meters under his feet instantly condensed. An old turtle was lying on the ground, vivid and lifelike. Qilu clang, clang, clang in an instant, tens of millions of thunder spears bombarded Han Fei's coiled turtle array. However, when one array was about to be shattered, Han Fei stomped and another coiled turtle array appeared. Hiss! Behind the humans, a spirit gatherer exclaimed, "Damn, is the coiled turtle array so strong?" A venerable who was both a spirit gatherer and a soul warrior was dumbfounded. Did I learn the wrong way? Seeing that Han Fei's shield was so strong that his endless lightning couldn't penetrate it, Yu Aohai roared and the two spears reappeared in his hands. This time, he soared into the sky. The next moment, the raging waves surged to the sky. In the seawater, a pair of scarlet eyes appeared, which was this person's associated spirit. Thunder technique. As soon as the black shadow opened its mouth, a thick thunderbolt was shot out. However, this thunderbolt didn't blast at Han Fei, but at Yu Aohai. Yu Aohai was hit, but in the thousands of meters of seawater, he turned into a water giant hundreds of meters high and thrust his two spears at the sky. At that moment, many people on the human side were shocked. Someone exclaimed, "Not good." Yu Aohai's attack, combined with the power of his associated spirit, has reached the advanced venerable realm. Someone roared, "Watch out!" Of course, most of the people who were shouting were explorers. The supreme expert's expressions were merely changing. They were all acting. Although Yu Aohai's attack seemed fierce, but no matter how fierce he was, could he be more fierce than Qin Xiang? Even Qin Xiang was blown up by Han Fei's two attacks. Yu Aohai was nothing. In the distance, Qin Xiang came to watch the battle in person. At this moment, her face was as cold as ice, completely indifferent to the battle in front of her. Bam, bam, bam. At that moment, Han Fei stepped on 3 coiled turtle arrays and put on spiritual armor. Crack, crack, crack. However, after one blow, facing the endless power, Han Fei's arrays persisted for 10 minutes before they were broken. At that moment, Han Fei was hit by the thunderbolt, and a deep pit with a range of more than 500 meters appeared on the surface of the sea. Good. Good job. What the hell? A mere spirit gatherer dares to fight on the front line? Is there no one else in the human race? Seeing this, the corners of Yu Aohai's mouth curled into a smile as he charged forward with his spear. However, just as Yu Aohai stepped on the surface of the sea, all of a sudden, the sea demon half-king sat up straight. Within a kilometer of Yu Aohai, a complex array suddenly appeared. Sizzle. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. At that moment, endless thunderbolts turned into knife light, wrapped in a layer of golden light, and in an instant, a storm was stirred up in the array. Puff, puff, puff. At that moment, Yu Aohai was instantly twisted into a skeleton, and there was no flesh or blood left on his body. Oh. You know I'm a spirit gatherer, but you still dare to underestimate me? Who will die if you don't? Han Fei's voice rang out leisurely. At that moment, Han Fei floated up from the water, and a holy light enveloped him. The cracks all over his body were shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. After only a few minutes, Han Fei's ruined body had been restored to its original state. Han Fei smiled faintly. Since you're good at using thunderbolts, you can die in thunderbolts. The conditions to use this thunder deity slaying array are extremely harsh. There must be a lot of power of thunderbolts. I'll try it on you. The sea demon half-king instantly got up and shouted in a low voice, "Let's call it a day." However, Han Fei stretched out his hand and a thunderbolt knife light seemed to be pulled out from the void. Boom, that knife light shattered Yu Aohai's bones. His soul had long been locked by Han Fei's void lines. At this moment, Han Fei had taken a sip. A red crack appeared in the sky, dark clouds gathered, and blood dripped down. Han Fei tilted his head to look at the sea demon half-king and said leisurely, "What did you just shout?" Chapter 1565. Yu Aohai's death was the consensus of all human venerables. In their view, Yu Aohai fought against a half-king with the power of a peak-level intermediate venerable. Who would die if he didn't? But Han Fei pretended to be so strong. It seemed that he had been crippled. However, as the strongest spirit gatherer of the human race, Han Fei's injuries were healed in an instant, and there wasn't even the slightest injury on his body. Huh! Sea demon scoundrel, look, this is the strength of our human race. Ha ha ha! Are you dumbfounded? Do you know that our human race has such a powerful spirit gatherer? Wow! Since when did our immortal city have such a strong master? It turns out that this is the real strength of a spirit gatherer. He can't be killed at all. In the noise behind, Han Fei absorbed a lot of ownerless souls. After consuming his soul power again, he was less than 5,000 points away from full recovery. As long as he slaughtered 4 more, he should be able to make up for it. As for vitality, Han Fei had already made up for it. However, when he went back this time, Han Fei planned to claim that his vitality was insufficient. In this way, he could get some spiritual fruits and heal tens of thousands of people. The sea demon half-king didn't expect that a spirit gatherer's killing means could be so powerful. Yu Aohai's physique was not weak. However, he couldn't even block a lightning blade. The problem was that Yu Aohai was extremely good at lightning fighting. However, he was killed by the lightning blade in the end. How could people not be shocked? At this moment, many people looked up at the sky and watched the blood rain pouring down. Many people slightly breathed a sigh of relief. In the past few decades, human beings had not been able to kill sea demon venerables. After all, it had always been sea demons suppressing human beings. On the human side, those who should have appeared had already appeared. These venerables of Black Blood City were very familiar with the combat power of the venerables of the human race. At this moment, Han Fei appeared as a brand new character with many means. Before, when facing Qinxiang, he used pure fighting methods, and everyone could feel the ferocious power from Han Fei. However, this time, Han Fei killed a powerhouse at the peak of the intermediate venerable realm with the help of a formation. Perhaps, for those explorers, Han Fei's battle wasn't easy. It was even thrilling. However, in the eyes of the human venerables, killing a venerable was as easy as taking a stroll in the park. Han Fei's expression was calm as he calmly looked at the half-sea demon king. He spoke with confidence and assurance amidst the splashing seawater and the boundless curtain of rain. "Look, my undying city isn't that weak, and Black Blood City isn't that strong. You haven't seen a spirit gatherer in action before. Today, I'll show you and let you know that you are all garbage." While saying this, Han Fei waved his hand casually, and the rolling waves collapsed, and the sea gradually calmed down. At that moment, Han Fei stood alone in the raging sea. One person seemed to have formed his own battle line, extremely valiant. Looking at this scene, Qinxiang had a strange thought in her heart. Yes, even at this moment, she still didn't think Han Fei looked like a commander. A commander should observe the overall situation and devise strategies. A general should command the army and fight everywhere, brave and invincible. A soldier should charge and break through enemy lines, attack cities and seize territory. It could be said that a soldier should do his best, a general should do his best, and a commander should do his best. But Han Fei didn't have any of these three. Qinxiang suddenly thought of something. According to the news from the Undying City, Han Fei regarded himself as a human king. What if this is true? This idea just flashed in Qinxiang's mind, and she didn't think about it deeply. At this moment, Han Fei was still standing in the sea, looking straight at the half-sea demon king. "I won't leave today. An intermediate venerable realm expert will not refuse anyone. No matter who it is, I will fight." Han Fei put his hands behind his back and held his head high. After a pause, Han Fei grinned. "Want to kill me? Maybe you only have this chance." If no one comes, I'm leaving. Many sea demon venerables frowned. This man was too evil. How long had it been since Yuao attacked? He was killed by a knife. More importantly, this man was unparalleled in arrays and could heal himself. He must have a strong explosive force that could blow him up in one round. Han Fei waited for another 2 minutes, glanced at the sea demon camp, and said disdainfully, "A bunch of trash, how dare you try to attack the human race, stop." Suddenly, the void was torn apart, and a long-haired young man in heavy armor crawled out of the void. Yes, he crawled out. The man's lower body had a total of 8 tentacles, like a spider, but with armor as thick as a crab's shell. The upper body was human, wearing armor that was so thick that it could be used as a shield. Hiss! When they saw this man, countless explorers on the human side gasped. "It's the crab eater. He's a lunatic." Someone said angrily, "Fuck, why did this thing come out? He eats everything. Everyone who is defeated by him is eaten by him." An undying shouted, "Kill him." A human venerable deliberately said to him via voice transmission, "Shall we stop here today? This man has a special identity. He has the bloodline of an ancient king crab and has amazing defensive power." The Great Path, the sea demon shook the void and shattered the voice coming from the human side. He said coldly, "Don't you think it's too late to say something at the last minute?" The crab-eater sneered and said, "A human spirit gatherer? I heard that you are an intermediate venerable and you don't refuse anyone." Han Fei shrugged slightly. "I said that I don't refuse anyone." The crab-eater's claws pierced the void and approached Han Fei a little. Because the speed at which his claws plunged into the void was too fast, every movement of his claws could create flames from the friction with the air. It was as if he was walking on fire. Han Fei raised his hand, and a spiritual energy storm formed above his body. Han Fei said, "Crab, it should taste good." Humph. Hardly had Han Fei said that when thousands of thorns pierced out of thin air from the void. Clank, clank, clank. However, at the moment those thorn shadows appeared, on Han Fei's body, an armor shield flew. The Taoist pattern 6 spirit armor appeared out of thin air. Tutu on the sea surface, a series of arrays appeared. In a breath's time, dozens of arrays appeared at a speed that was so fast that it was dazzling to the eyes. The coiled turtle array, the soul driving array, the spirit gathering array, the 6 spirit armor. There were also some lines that Han Fei couldn't understand, swimming in the sea. He didn't know what they were for. Han Fei still had his hands behind his back and said with a faint smile, "I heard that you are very powerful. I'd like to see how powerful a crab can be." Hey! The crab-eater was so fast that his body disappeared and he began to circle around Han Fei. As it spun, 2 bodies came out. Han Fei sensed it and found it was a bit like the Gemini divine technique. One was the original body, the other was a shadow, but in terms of strength, the 2 didn't seem to be weakened. Han Fei immediately understood that this person had a special ability that allowed him to have 2 bodies. It was also a bit similar to Zhang Xuanyu's triple original body. However, no matter which one it was not as powerful as his Gemini divine technique. If he were to use the Gemini divine technique, this crab-eater demon would be able to bite him to death. Han Fei stepped on the sea and saw a giant turtle 1,000 feet high lying across the sea. The giant turtle roared and the array was mysterious. Han Fei said lightly, "I don't know who gave you the courage to think that you can compete with me." Ha! Arrogant human, you are indeed unparalleled in arrays. However, there are thousands of great Daos in this world. How many can you defend with arrays? You want to break all arrays with one? Humph. I don't believe it. The shadow crab-eater turned into a shadow, ignored the array, and directly grabbed Han Fei's shadow. At the moment when the shadow passed through the array, Han Fei frowned slightly, took out the embroidery needle, and made a gesture of preparing to attack. However, it never occurred to Han Fei that the shadow didn't touch his body. Instead, it only touched his shadow, yet it was able to confront his soul. The venerables on the sea demon's side all smiled when they saw Han Fei's shadow being caught. This time, there's no way to save him. The great path of the crab-eater, eating shadow. Even if Han Fei knew it, he would be caught unknowingly, let alone Han Fei who didn't know. The next moment, Han Fei was completely motionless. The crab-eater chuckled. See, I was right, wasn't I? You have to pay for your ignorance. The 10 blades of the crab-eater rotated and drilled through Han Fei's great plate turtle array. After all, this was a defensive array designed to resist peak-level intermediate venerables. As long as the attack was strong enough, it would always be broken. Just when the 10 cone-shaped crab claws were only 10 meters away from Han Fei suddenly made a stabbing gesture. Bam! A round hole was blasted out of the crab-eater's body. A large swath of blue divine souls was blasted out by Han Fei. What a pity! Boom! In the sky, another red crack appeared, and the range of the blood rain expanded. The crab-eater was so excited that he didn't even know why he was stabbed to death by Han Fei's spear. This was probably the most wronged guy in Black Blood City so far. He thought that the enemy would die in his hands in the next second. However, the result was exactly the opposite. Han Fei grabbed the corpse of the crab-eater and the sun-moon shell, threw them into Forge the Universe, and said flatly, "King Crab? It should taste good." Everyone, the faint smile on the sea demon half-king's face suddenly froze, and he stepped to the edge of the battlefield. Who the hell are you? Han Fei glanced at him indifferently and suddenly grinned. Me. I want to challenge higher levels. Do any of you sea demons dare to fight me? The half-king suddenly thought of one thing. A few years ago, an incident happened in the Demon Beast Alliance. A man named Bull Demon King killed 7 sea demons in 3 battles. Even the momentum in Black Blood City at that time was weakened. Today, he suddenly felt something. The sea demon half-king shouted, "Who the hell are you?" At this time, Han Fei also knew that he couldn't fight anymore. If the people of Black Blood City were still fooled at this time, they would be stupid. Han Fei raised his head slightly. My name is Han Fei. Chapter 1566. Now that he was sure that the sea demon half-king wouldn't send more people to fight him, Han Fei told him his real name without hesitation. Han Fei had considered using the Death Bone Sun to disguise himself as an immortal and kill the enemy again. However, he didn't know how the immortals fought, and he had never pretended to be one before. Not to mention that it was easy to be exposed. No matter how good his acting was, he could only kill one more person before the enemy realized it. Now, telling the enemy his name was far more shocking than pretending to be an immortal. Others might not know, but since this person was the half-king of Black Blood City, he should know the plan of Black Blood City to invade the Yin-Yang Heaven. Then he should know who Han Fei was. Sure enough, the sea demon half-king's pupils constricted when he heard Han Fei's name. It's you. You're in the cage. Han Fei put his hands behind his back again and said leisurely, those who offend the human world must be killed. Tell the Black Killer Snail King that I'm here. Today, I'll kill 2 to greet him. In the future, when my troops arrive at the city gates, I will still need his head. Arrogant bastard, how dare you insult my king? Humans are courting death. The Immortal City is tired of living and is ready to start a full-scale war with Black Blood City, isn't it? The sea demon half-king raised his arm and looked at Han Fei deeply. I'll tell him what you said. However, the inside of the cage is different from the outside. I'd like to see how powerful the Immortal City can make you so arrogant. Retreat. Under the sea demon half-king's order, the sea demon experts retreated like a tide. After all, Black Blood City fought with humans in the Yin-Yang Heaven and was completely defeated. Many people had never been to the Yin-Yang Heaven. Their understanding of humans in the Yin-Yang Heaven was limited to what the Black Killer Snail King revealed and Chao Xian. Now, Han Fei appeared in the Immortal City. Did it mean that the Immortal City might have found the way to the outside world? If so, how many foreign venerables were there in the Immortal City now? This was all an unknown. On the other side, Han Fei killed 2 venerables in a row. Moreover, both of them were at the peak of the intermediate venerable realm, so they were not weak at all. At this time, the venerables of the immortal city had an idea: if there was something wrong with Han Fei, Black Blood City wouldn't have sacrificed 2 such powerful experts to confuse them. Besides, judging from Han Fei's style of doing things today, the calmer he was and the more casual he was, the more domineering he was. In the end, Han Fei openly challenged the Black Killer Snail King. His calm demeanor made the scalps of countless people behind go numb. Many martial highnesses even began to transmit their voices to the 3.5 martial monarchs. Is it really okay to let him challenge the Black Killer Snail King? Someone said with a solemn expression, "This person is arrogant and unreasonable. I admit that he is extremely strong and his talent in all aspects far surpasses ordinary people. However, he can only fight against half a king right now, right?" Someone nodded in agreement. The Black Killer Snail King is a false king, and there are many demi-kings in Black Blood City. If all these people come out, how can my undying city block them? Even the other 2 demi-kings couldn't help but fall into deep thought. From the tone of the other side and their reactions after hearing Han Fei's name, they could roughly guess that there was a huge conflict between Han Fei and Black Blood City. However, just as the other venerables suspected, the difference in strength between the Immortal City and Black Blood City wasn't just a little bit. Now, Han Fei challenged the Black Killer Snail King only after killing 2 of them. What on earth did he rely on? After Han Fei's 2 battles, the entire human race's frontline also stirred up a heated discussion. Some people said that Han Fei should be so domineering, some said that Han Fei couldn't see the current situation clearly, and some asked, what should happen next has happened. Han Fei looked back at Gan Feng and the others and said indifferently, "Do you think I'm too aggressive? It turns out that you've been being worn down by the other side. Every few years, one of you will be heavily injured, and every few years, another will be injured. It won't be long before the Undying City is completely transformed into immortals, or it will be defeated by the sea demons. It's understandable that you're good at defense. But I'm good at offense, and I need cooperation." A half-king realm powerhouse said telepathically, "You mean you've attracted the Black Killer Snail King here, and we'll block it for you? Or, you're already as strong as the Black Killer Snail King?" Han Fei grinned. "The Black Killer Snail King is here. I'll add 10 more." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. He tore open the void and went straight to Firestone Island. On Firestone Island, 2 red cracks appeared in the sky. Everyone could see it clearly. A rain of blood fell on the island, making them swallow uncontrollably. They knew that Han Fei was going to kill the venerables. However, who the hell knew that he would kill the venerables so soon? They felt that as soon as Han Fei left, a venerable died. Not even half an incense stick's worth of time passed after the first one fell, and another one fell. Such a speed of killing venerables made the explorers on Firestone Island feel a sense of hope. It seemed that humans hadn't been so domineering for a long time. The reason why the Immortal City didn't get angry at Han Fei for provoking the Black Killer Snail King was that they didn't think the Black Killer Snail King would come. What if the Black Killer Snail King really had the ability to destroy the Immortal City? It had been here for a long time. As for the human side, they had been hiding in this cage until now, so they naturally had some ways to deal with the Black Killer Snail King. Therefore, after Han Fei killed the 2 sea demon venerables, most people chose to believe Han Fei and waited to see what Han Fei would do next. Han Fei's identity was real. There was no doubt about this. However, now that his strength had been exposed, how could he find a way to kill 10 sea demons? At this moment, on Firestone Island, many people were cultivating, recovering, and sparring with each other. However, after the first sea demon died, these people all looked up at the sky. The venerable realm powerhouses gathered in groups of 3 to 5. Long Shi and the others stood together, feeling complicated. They were the first group of people who followed Han Fei. At that time, who knew that Han Fei would be so strong? Chen Yu looked at Long Shi and couldn't help saying, "Long Shi, do you know where General Han sent Hua Meng to?" Why hasn't he come back yet? Long Shi shook his head slightly. I don't know. No one knew what this General Han was thinking. Hua Meng must have a place to go since he left. On the other side, Lu Yuntian looked at this scene with mixed feelings. His furrowed brows had never relaxed. Old Lu. Lu Yuntian was sitting on a big tree, lost in thought, when he saw Wang He come to his side. Lu Yuntian was puzzled at this moment. Everyone looked like a spy to him now. Of course, he couldn't show it on the surface. His voice was slightly cold as he said, "What's wrong?" Wang He smiled and said, "Nothing. Can't I come to see you?" The newly arrived Commander Han was indeed arrogant. But now it seems that he is indeed strong. In such a short time, he killed 2 sea demons in a row. Who can do this? Lu Yuntian's heart did a flip. His first reaction was, is Wang He a spy? Lu Yuntian immediately thought about Wang He. In the entire history of the human race, only a third of the Venerable Realm cultivators had never killed a sea demon venerable. They either died together with the sea demons, killed the sea demons, or were killed. Only a third of them severely injured the sea demons, or were severely injured by the sea demons. In Wang He's experience, although he had never killed a sea demon venerable, he had severely injured the sea demon venerable 3 times. So, it didn't look like it. Moreover, Wang He's background was not very good. He was born in an ordinary family. He had reached this point by taking one step at a time. Wait. Lu Yuntian suddenly remembered, more than 600 years ago, the Immortal City and Black Blood City had a super war. At that time, more than 50 venerables participated in the war. After that war, Wang He seemed to have been rescued. When he was rescued, he almost didn't even have the power to be reborn from a single drop of blood. Since then, Wang He rarely participated in the war. In 400 to 500 years, he had participated in less than 10 wars before he was severely injured again. Humph. Thinking of this, Lu Yuntian snorted softly. This person is domineering. This should be his character. Wang He shook his head and said, "No, look at Long Shi and the other junior venerables, but now they are suppressing you, an advanced venerable, to lead the troops. This is obviously. He is deliberately suppressing and excluding you. But I guess Han Fei also wants to subdue you and make you submit to him. After all, no matter how strong Han Fei is, he is still not as good as you in terms of realm." Lu Yuntian looked at Wang He. "What do you want to say?" Wang He smiled and said, "Old Lu, my foundation has recovered, and my strength is also at the peak of the intermediate venerable realm. Even if Long Shi and the others can suppress you, I can't stand it. To be honest, I want to leave. I don't want to be under this person's leadership." "Oh. Why?" Lu Yuntian couldn't help but look at Wang He in surprise, showing a trace of interest. And Wang He saw it in his eyes and thought, no matter what Lu Yuntian says on the surface, he always has a grudge against Han Fei in his heart. After all, Han Fei has humiliated Lu Yuntian many times. As a venerable, who doesn't have a face? Wang He said, Han Fei asked the Immortal City for people on the pretext of treating us. But now, he can indeed heal the damage to our foundation. However, he also controls about 20% of the power of the entire Immortal City. What does this mean? He has only been in the Immortal City for a few days, but he has already mastered such a huge power. What is he going to do? Lu Yuntian's heart did a flip, but he pretended to be puzzled and said, "He is the commander. If he wants to fight a war, he naturally needs someone. What's wrong with that?" Wang He shook his head. "No. This person is too domineering. He acts too fast. He said he would slaughter 10 sea monster great venerables. So far, he has already slaughtered 2. Do you think he is only going to kill the venerables by himself? Then what does he want us to do?" Lu Yuntian asked, "You mean, he is going to use me next?" Wang He nodded. "And it will be an extremely dangerous use. This person is too arrogant, but he doesn't know much about the Immortal City. I am afraid he will have a problem. So, I don't want to work for him. I don't think you want to live under someone else's roof, do you? Lu Yuntian was silent for a moment. When he was about to speak, the void above Firestone Island trembled, and Han Fei had already walked out of the crack. Immediately, Wang He patted Lu Yuntian's chest. Old Lu, let's go and welcome General Han. Chapter 1567. As soon as Han Fei appeared on the island, he scanned the entire Firestone Island with his perception and found that no one was missing. When he saw Lu Yuntian and Wang He together, he just scanned them with his perception and didn't take it seriously at all. The old tortoise said, "You've already exposed yourself. What's the point of keeping this spy? He's a strong master. If you're not careful, he may ruin your plan." Han Fei grinned. Old Yuan, those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. You even know the identity of a mere spy. You're so useful. In the past few days, everyone had figured out Han Fei's style. During the wartime, when Han Fei gave orders as the commander, they couldn't go against his will. Seeing that everyone was here, Han Fei said, "All semi-venerables, peak-level explorers, and advanced explorers, come forward. I hunted the 2 venerables and recovered my vitality. Today, I'm going to cure you." Now, Han Fei had only led them for a few days. Although they were very convinced by Han Fei, they couldn't say that he was invincible and brave. After all, it was also related to the situation of these people. In the cage, the survival crisis on the human side was relatively severe. People who lived on the edge of life and death for a long time generally wouldn't curry favor with their leaders too much. At this moment, when they heard that Han Fei had indeed hunted the 2 venerables, many of them gasped. Some people were looking forward to Han Fei's treatment and recovery to their peak state as soon as possible. In that way, they could also go to the battlefield. Heavenly Awakening. Endless Sage Realm pillars of light descended. The movement on the Firestone Island attracted the attention of all the semi-kings. Unbeknownst to everyone, a barren grave reappeared on the Forbidden Island, and some jade girls raised their heads. Phew, this time, Han Fei consumed more than 3,300 years of vitality. And this was under the circumstance that the effect of the Heavenly Awakening divine art was more than twice that of the previous one. Otherwise, the vitality consumed would reach nearly 8,000 years. Han Fei remained calm on the surface and said, "Those who have recovered to their peak state, evenly divide into 24 teams. Each venerable will have a team. I need to go into seclusion for a few days. During this period, no one is allowed to leave the island." In fact, Han Fei had been stopping these people not because he wanted to hide any trump cards. The reason was that it was unnecessary. After all, the frontline battlefield was only so big, and there was no big movement at all. Even 800 explorers couldn't do anything, let alone more than 300,000 people. So, since it was useless to go, why not go? As for Han Fei's so-called seclusion, he went into the general's mansion, set up an array, and left Firestone Island in the form of a black fog. After a while, Han Fei stood alone outside the Forbidden Island raging with astral winds for a while. It was different from other islands. The other islands had been inhabited by humans for many years. They had long been sealed off and transformed into safe places. Only the Taboo Island looked very strange. Inside this cage, when the chaotic energy swept towards the island, it would be devoured by the frequent void cracks that appeared in the air. As a result, although there were howling astral winds on the Forbidden Island, they were actually not very strong. This unique spatial feature gave the animals on the island a certain living space. Before setting foot on this island, Han Fei grabbed the 9-Palace Ruler of Destiny. The scale of the 9-Palace Ruler of Destiny moved quickly and finally fell directly on the even stick. This meant that this trip seemed to be uneventful and there was no gain. In fact, he might not even encounter the dangers that others spoke of. Han Fei didn't know if it was because he had already been to the Forbidden Island once. Immediately, Han Fei pointed his finger, and a wisp of chaotic energy fell on the 9-Palace Ruler of Destiny. The Ruler of Destiny moved a little. A lucky hexagram. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. This was his confidence. With the 9-palace ruler of destiny, as long as he had the chaotic energy, he would be safe. He still remembered the last time he entered this forbidden island. It was very thrilling. Especially when he went to look for the dragon origin chi, he was almost killed. Since it was a lucky hexagram, he was relieved. At this moment, Han Fei pointed his finger again, and another wisp of chaotic energy fell on the 9-palace ruler of destiny. The ruler of the 9 palaces fortune ruler moved slightly again, but it was still a little short of the auspicious sign. Hiss. Do I need to use 2 wisps? Han Fei's face immediately turned green. He had already consumed 2 wisps of chaotic energy, which was half a year's worth of hard work. If the intensity of the power of truth wasn't high, the time would be 10 times longer. This meant that if he had changed his luck according to common sense, it would have taken him 5 years to do so. However, he had already used the 9-palace ruler of destiny and 2 wisps of chaotic energy. He couldn't give up now, could he? Hiu. Another wisp of chaotic energy fell on the 9-palace ruler of destiny. However, the 9-palace ruler of destiny only touched the lucky hexagram and fell back. The old turtle said, "Don't panic. This means that it's difficult for you to form a lucky hexagram on this island. Of course, it's also possible that it's not easy to achieve your own goal. However, you have plenty of chaotic energy. You can use it again." Han Fei rolled his eyes. What do you mean I have plenty of chaotic energy? I'm panicking if I use 4 wisps at once. Generally speaking, it's a problem for people below the advanced venerable level to have 4 wisps of chaotic energy in total. Only a prodigal like me dares to use it like this. Han Fei gritted his teeth and threw out another wisp of chaotic energy. Finally, the ruler landed on the auspicious hexagram. Who? Han Fei took a long breath of relief and was about to land on the island, when he heard the old turtle say, "Are you going to meet the monster in that desolate tomb?" Han Fei nodded. Yes. The old turtle couldn't help but say, "Think about it carefully. This ruler should only change your luck temporarily. However, that guy can't be simple. How can such a large island disappear into thin air and appear in the outside world? When you came in, there was such a small gap, and it took you a lot of effort to get in. Have you ever considered how to get out of this island?" Han Fei was stunned for a moment. What the old turtle said made a lot of sense. How could such a large forbidden island get out so easily? That would be too disrespectful to the wall of death. Han Fei suddenly exclaimed, "Shoot! Old Yuan, do you think this wall of death has anything to do with that person?" The old turtle denied, "I'm not sure. Who knows? However, I think it should be related to him more or less. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. If it's related to him, it's unreasonable that he doesn't let humans out. He may be the one who set up the seal. Why did he set up this seal? Is it to prevent people from the other immortal palaces from getting in? However, on second thought, Chen Huangdian had been here too. Also, the unknown expert who was looking for Xia Shaochan had been here too. Those people weren't all kings. Even the Life Queen didn't dare to set foot on this place easily. Why could those people come in? Han Fei felt that there must be something else behind this. Han Fei and the old turtle suddenly said in unison, "It's to seal something." Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and immediately said, "Yes. Yes, it must be to seal something. Otherwise, the existence of this seal wouldn't be so meaningful. Even if it was to block foreign enemies, there was no need to confine humans and beasts here. That person could create such a huge seal. It should be easy for him to destroy the sea demons." The old turtle asked, "Don't you have the nautical instrument?" Han Fei's lips twitched, and then he sneered. "Old Yuan, you want me to die, don't you? Even the ancient masters had to pay such a high price to seal something here. Do you think I can deal with it?" The old turtle said, "You have the nautical instrument and the ruler of destiny. Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He naturally knew what the old turtle meant. The nautical instrument could find things, and the ruler of destiny could change one's luck. Combining the two, he could find secrets and avoid danger. Hiss. Han Fei took a deep breath. Old Yuan, what do you think of this island? The old turtle said, I think if I have something to suppress, this island must be a good location. Han Fei swallowed and then took a breath. I just changed my luck. Today is an auspicious day. Han Fei activated the Gemini divine technique and stepped onto the island in white mist. Because he was too fast, several space cracks directly cut Han Fei's body. However, Han Fei didn't care. He immediately activated the Universal Manifestation Instrument. When the nautical panorama pointed to the northwest, Han Fei cursed. The northwest was where the barren grave grassland was located. It seemed that the reason why the barren grave existed there was not only because of the war between the ancient human race and the dragon race. Obviously, there were other secrets there. Han Fei muttered to himself, I have an auspicious divination. Nothing will happen to me. With this in mind, Han Fei went in the direction of the grassland again. This time, Han Fei was different from back then. At this moment, he was a venerable. As soon as he released his pressure, no creatures dared to approach him. Because there were too many space cracks, Han Fei didn't walk very fast and it only took him half a day to arrive. When approaching the barren grave, Han Fei coughed twice. With a thought in his mind, a huge king crab with a body length of 500 or 600 meters lay beside Han Fei. This was the corpse of the crab-eater demon. Han Fei dragged the crab's corpse into the grassland and shouted as soon as he came in, Senior, I, Han Fei, have brought you food. Chapter 1568. Han Fei had been to this grassland once, and this time he came with the 9-palace ruler of Providence. However, after sensing the chaotic heavenly secrets, Han Fei was still a little scared. Han Fei said, Senior, I, Han Fei. Last time, I said I would go out to find food for you. But when I came back, you were already gone. Who do you think I am? Every word I say is a nail in the coffin. Since I said I would bring it to you, I must bring it to you. Look, a king crab, this is a good thing. It can clear heat and detoxify, replenish bone marrow, nourish tendons and promote blood circulation. The crab demon would never have thought that he would end up like this. He was dragged by someone to be sent as a gift, and it was even food. Han Fei walked in for only about 100 kilometers. Suddenly, when Han Fei looked back, he found that the border of the grassland had disappeared. His position in space had already changed. When Han Fei looked back again, he found that a barren grave appeared 100 meters away. Han Fei was speechless. Damn, do you have to be so ghostly when you appear? Can't you just show up properly? With a smile on his face, Han Fei dragged the crab to the barren grave. As he walked, he said, Senior, you may not believe it. In order to hunt this crab, I paid a great price. Look, a king crab at the peak of the intermediate venerable realm. Its meat quality is definitely amazing. Clap, clap. Han Fei patted the claws of the king crab and said, Look at these claws. They are full of meat and fat. Huh? Han Fei took a few steps and found that he was not even half a meter away from the barren grave. He immediately realized. It was a habit of the barren grave. Thus, he turned his head away. Han Fei turned his head back and forth. Fuck! Han Fei subconsciously took a step back. Because the barren grave was already 3 meters away from him, and the entrance was wide open. Fuck, don't you think this situation is going to scare someone to death? If 2 butterflies flew out of it, I wouldn't be so surprised. Han Fei closed his eyes and opened them again, and there was only darkness in front of him. This was different from the last time. The last time he fell into the barren tomb, he had to walk for quite a while before he saw that figure eating lotus roots. It was eating the White Shell Kingdom's prodigy, the green silk spirit. This time, when Han Fei opened his eyes, he saw a person standing 10 meters away from him. Beside the human figure was a large crab that was more than 3 meters long. Han Fei looked back. There were no more king crabs around him. It was obvious that the figure had taken it away. When he came here, he deliberately made the king crab so big. In any case, whether they were big or small, they were all the same. The energy it contained was the same as the effect of the meat. After becoming smaller, only the energy stored per unit volume and the quality of the meat became better. Crack. Han Fei saw that the figure was holding a crab leg in each hand, which was eaten with the shell and meat. Han Fei thought to himself, "Don't you feel a toothache?" Of course, he couldn't bring himself to ask this question. However, although this figure could directly eat the crab, it couldn't eat a lot in one bite like the green silk spirit did before. After eating this crab, he only ate the size of a small fist, which should be enough for this figure to eat for a while. Gudu. Han Fei pondered for a moment and said with a smile, "Senior, I'm here to thank you. Last time, thanks to your guidance, I broke the blood pool, opened the dragon tomb, and swallowed the dragon energy to vent your anger." Crack. Han Fei saw that the figure was gnawing the crab leg while looking at him. He didn't know what it was thinking. Han Fei said, "Senior, I'm here to share 2 good things with you. There are 300 more crabs of the same level as the one in your hand. Half of them are much more delicious than this crab. It's said that the strongest one is only half a king. Are you interested?" Crack. 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 The figure continued to gnaw the crab leg, but this time much faster. Han Fei wondered. Was it attracted by the number of sea demon venerables? The figure thought for a moment and made a gurgling sound. Not interested. When the figure said this, Han Fei's eyes lit up. As long as this person spoke, it meant that he could talk with him. Seeing that this figure was interested, Han Fei thought, what is this figure's interest? Of course, it's dragon slaying. At first glance, this person must have a grudge against the dragon race. The last time they met, he asked Han Fei to dig the dragon tomb before he left. It could be seen that his hatred was as deep as the sea. Han Fei just said that he was half a king, but the figure didn't respond. Could it be? This big shot is really a king? Han Fei made up his mind. He thought, it shouldn't be a big problem to cut off the dragon corpse's claw and forge the universe, right? Well, it's just a claw. When I meet the dragon's soul, I'll say that it's gone when I found it. Han Fei took out a bloody dragon claw from Forge the Universe. This time, before Han Fei said anything, the figure threw away the crab leg and appeared in front of Han Fei in an instant. Its 2 big eyes were already staring at the dragon claw in Han Fei's hand. Giggle, gulp. Han Fei swallowed. This was the first time he had seen the real face of this figure. At a closer look, Han Fei found that the man was so skinny that he looked like a bag of bones. His face was full of wrinkles, like a mummy. His eyes were completely black, or rather, dry. How could this thing be a person? Crack! The next moment, the figure opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of sawtooth-like steel teeth, and bit at the dragon claw in Han Fei's hand. Chomp! Damn it! At the moment when this person bit half of the dragon claw, Han Fei directly let go, for fear that this thing would eat him too. Chomp! Chomp! Unlike the venerable realm crab, this figure chewed the dragon meat like gummy candy and chewed for a long time before swallowing it. Han Fei grinned and watched as blood slid down the man's neck. Originally, this was a very disgusting thing. However, Han Fei soon found something wrong. He found that this mummy. The dry and wrinkled skin on this mummy's face was bulging. After he swallowed that half of the dragon claw, his skin, which was even more wrinkled than a mummy's, actually recovered quite a bit. He looked like a normal old man, with a skinny body and a face full of wrinkles. But at least, he still looked like a human. The mummy looked at him, blood still dripping from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were a little rounder, but they were dark and nothing could be seen. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't give the complete dragon corpse to this guy. After all, this dragon corpse was still useful to him. He had to exchange it with the dragon soul. He could also exchange it for a drop of azure dragon essence blood and a dragon transformation technique. Compared with being eaten by this mummy, Han Fei felt that it was better to exchange it for something else. Han Fei quickly took out a lot of sun moon shells and said, "Senior, let's talk. I only have this small piece. If you don't believe me, you can see for yourself." However, Han Fei stuffed some dragon bones into one of the sun moon shells. These were all obtained under the blood pool on the Forbidden Island. He still had a lot of them. He could take a few out and say that the space of the sun moon shell was limited and he couldn't take them out. The mummy glanced at Han Fei's sun moon shell. Of course, he couldn't find anything good. There wasn't even an explorer-level sea demon inside. However, the mummy paused and immediately pointed at the sea-swallowing seashell stuffed with dragon bones. Bam! The sun moon shell burst, and two pieces of dragon bones more than 80 meters long suddenly appeared in this dark hole. The mummy clasped his hands, and the dragon bones began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, they became two bones only half a meter long. Han Fei's blood froze when he saw this. He blew up the sun moon shell with a finger. What the fuck is this? If the sun moon shell was just a shell, it would naturally be easy to break. However, the sun moon shell was not a shell. It was a space, but it appeared in the world in the form of a shell. It's true that you can break the void, but you can't crush the space. This was why the sea-swallowing seashell and the sun moon shell were still there in the Battle of the Strong Masters. Han Fei explained, "Senior, these are the dragon bones I found under the blood pool." He had thought that it had been too long since the dragon bone had appeared, and that it was no longer useful. "Otherwise, I would have given them to you as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Junior's storage space is limited, and I can only store 2. I won't be able to store any more." The mummy gurgled a few times, sniffed, and in the dragon bones, a red light and the energy of the Great Way were sucked into his body. Immediately afterward, the 2 dragon bones turned into powder and disappeared without a trace. Han Fei's eyes lit up. "Isn't this the chaotic chi?" "No, I wonder what that red light is." However, the energy of the Great Way is clearly the chaotic chi. And this mummy just sniffed and sucked back 2 wisps of the chaotic chi. Han Fei was speechless. How annoying. Damn it. I've been running around with a huge amount of chaotic aura all this time. Han Fei really wanted to complain to the old turtle, "Even if I don't know, don't you know? Or has the old turtle been hiding it from me?" At that time, Han Fei felt terrible. It seems that after robbing high-end things in the future, I have to study them carefully. Han Fei thought to himself, "Fortunately, I have forged the universe. Otherwise, he would be finished. His dragon bones would definitely be eaten up by this mummy." Giggle. No. Wrong. Chapter 1569. Han Fei subconsciously licked his lips. Damn it, it's much easier than extracting chaotic energy from spiritual energy. All it took was a single breath of time for the other party to absorb the energy contained in the dragon bone. Han Fei asked, "Senior, do you still need these dragon bones?" "At the beginning, I was too weak to get many dragon bones from the barren land. However, now that I've reached the venerable realm and have a lot of sun moon shells, do you still want them? If you do, I'll go and have a look again." Although it was an independent small world, there might still be some wreckage left behind. "I'll go and see if I can get some more for you, Senior." In the blink of an eye, the mummy had disappeared in front of Han Fei. The crab claw that he had just thrown away had returned to his hand at some point. Giggle. Okay, Han Fei frowned. This guy didn't even let go of the dragon bones. It seemed that there were indeed great benefits in the dragon bones. Han Fei felt that he could go and have a look. At the beginning, he left in a hurry and was running for his life. So, what happened to that small world? He didn't know. Now that he had the nautical panorama, he could try to see if he could find the entrance to that small world again. Seeing that the mummy agreed, Han Fei immediately said, "Yes. Senior, I'll go and have a look first. If there are any dragon bones left, I'll definitely get them for you." However, when Han Fei was about to leave, he saw that the mummy had already blocked his way. Han Fei's lips twitched. "Senior. Do you have any other orders?" "Giggle," the mummy said with difficulty, "Dragon claw. Where did you get it?" Han Fei made up his mind. Han Fei said righteously, "Senior, to tell you the truth. That dragon claw was cut off by me after a battle with a half-king level dragon. At that time, it was a narrow escape. I tried my best, used all my secret methods, and borrowed the power of strong masters to barely reach the half-king level for dozens of seconds. In this way, I barely escaped from the dragon claw. I wanted to hunt a big dragon for you, but my strength was limited, and I was really no match for it. Alas." Crack, 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 the mummy chewed the crab claw faster and faster. In just a few sentences, it had actually chewed the entire crab claw to pieces. Obviously, the battle with the azure dragon that Han Fei talked about attracted him. "Hee, where is it?" Han Fei's eyes lit up, full of resentment. "Senior, it's in this cage. I was only able to escape into this cage after fighting with this dragon. It was the dragon that opened the way for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to enter. After I entered, I was attacked by a half-king called the Black Killer Snail King. Left with no choice, he found the humans' undead city. However, this junior suspects that the dragon is still in the cage, possibly within the boundaries of Black Blood City. Because it doesn't seem easy to get out of this cage." At this moment, Han Fei almost closed his eyes, and started bragging. In any case, if there was a problem, he could just push it onto Black Blood City. At that time, who would be to blame if the dragon ran away? "I'm telling the truth. If it really didn't work out, he could just use some dragon blood to frame them. Who could say for sure?" Seeing the mummy chewing the crab claw again, Han Fei couldn't help but add fuel to the fire. "Senior, this dragon must be hiding within the boundaries of Black Blood City. I'll definitely help you find it, Senior. However, it may take a few years. After all, my strength is still limited, and I can't defeat it. When my strength improves again, I'll definitely hunt that dragon for you." "Hee. Dragon slaying technique. I'll teach you, huh?" Han Fei was stunned. "Damn it. You can even trick me into teaching you a great technique? Oh my god." Sure enough, this trip wasn't in vain. Sure enough, the 4 wisps of chaotic energy weren't wasted. The 9-palace ruler of destiny was truly the most precious treasure in the world. Han Fei immediately clasped his hands solemnly. "Thank you for your teachings, Senior. I won't let you down. I'll learn the dragon slaying technique well and become a real dragon slayer in the future." "Hey, Senior, is it the great technique? Dragon bone sucking technique you just used?" "Baji. Giggle. That's dragon swallowing technique." Han Fei's mind was racing. "I didn't see the dragon slaying technique. I don't know whether it's good or not. But this dragon swallowing technique is definitely a good thing. It absorbs the chaotic energy so fast that it's like smoking." The next moment, the mummy approached Han Fei. The big hand that was as dry as rotten wood pressed directly on Han Fei's head. Han Fei only felt a large area of light and shadow surging in his mind. Immediately afterward, an inexplicable great technique appeared in his mind. He took a closer look. Dragon slaying technique, see expansion realm, introduction, the derivation of the ancient dragon slaying technique, the dragon slaying technique from the primeval era. After the changes of history, it's missing a lot. If you want to practice the dragon slaying technique, you must practice the Black-Yellow Sutra first. Deduction. Deduction consumption. Effect, the Black-Yellow Sutra is the blade. Disadvantages: practicing this technique consumes a lot of energy. You must drink dragon blood and dragon chi to nourish yourself. Gulp. Han Fei was shocked by what he saw. Damn it. Are you kidding me? He just gave me a super great technique of the heaven expansion realm. Han Fei thought to himself, I haven't even figured out the venerable realm yet. You've already reached the sea expansion realm with me. What the hell am I going to do? Han Fei knew that this mummy must be delirious. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given me a great technique of the sea expansion realm. I can't do anything about it. Besides, this is not the dragon slaying technique, but the dragon slaying technique. Also, if you want to practice the dragon slaying technique, you must practice the Black Yellow Sutra first. What's the Black Yellow Sutra? If you want to give me something, just give me everything, okay? You've made me happy for nothing. I can't use it. Isn't it the same as having nothing? Han Fei was about to speak, but in the blink of an eye, he returned to the grassland. There were no more desolate tombs around him. Han Fei was silent for a moment and walked out of the grassland with a determined look on his face. He didn't know who he was acting for. It wasn't until he left this grassland that Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Damn, I gave you my dragon claw for nothing. Somehow, I got a great technique that I can't practice at all. What the hell? Until this moment, the old turtle suddenly said, what's the dragon slaying technique about? Han Fei said with a black face, bullshit. That's a great technique of the sea expansion realm. I can't practice it at all now. Han Fei didn't tell the truth. He only said that it was in the sea expansion realm, just to show that the mummy was definitely extraordinary. Han Fei was suspicious. Damn, it's not a king at all. He was probably a king when he was alive. Otherwise, how could he practice the dragon slaying technique? And the old turtle said in surprise, a great technique of the sea expansion realm. Then it seems that this person is indeed a king. Han Fei nodded. Yes, definitely a king. However, his mind was already in a mess. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given me such a great technique. By the way, old Yuan, do you know the Black Yellow Sutra? Black Yellow Sutra. The old turtle was stunned for a moment and said, well, I seem to have some impression of it. Han Fei's eyes lit up. Do you know what technique this is? The old turtle said, this is not a technique, this is a cultivation technique. It seems to be a cultivation technique of the human race. It is said that it can produce heaven and earth black yellow chi. However, it is definitely not the real black yellow chi. It may just be the shadow of a wisp of black yellow chi. Han Fei asked, where can I get it? The old turtle said, how do I know? I should be able to find it in the age of gods. Where can I find it now? I really don't know. My body has been sleeping for tens of thousands of years. Why do you suddenly ask this question? Han Fei didn't hide it and said directly, if you want to practice the dragon slaying technique, you must practice the Black Yellow Sutra first. The old turtle immediately understood and couldn't help but laugh. It seems that the great technique he gave you is indeed useless for the time being. Then do you still want to find the dragon bones for him now? Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, yes. Why not? He also has the dragon swallowing technique. Look at him, he can absorb a mouthful of chaotic chi like a child. In one breath, he sucked out 2 strands. Did you see that? Oh, no, old Yuan. Did you already know that there was chaotic chi in the dragon bones? The old turtle immediately denied, I didn't know. I have never been in contact with dragons. If I had known that there was chaotic chi in the dragon bones, I would have secretly absorbed it. Maybe I would have sucked it dry and you wouldn't even know it. Han Fei thought so. That's true. According to the old Yuan's personality, there was an 80% chance that he would secretly absorb the chaos energy behind his back. The old turtle said, I think if he is a sea expansion realm expert, you may not be able to practice the dragon swallowing technique. Don't screw it up. Han Fei snorted. If I can't practice it now, I can practice it after I become a sea expansion realm expert. What a great opportunity. Why don't you take it when you can? While the two talked, Han Fei flew to the blood pool. On the way to the blood pool, Han Fei looked in the direction of the Death Valley from time to time. Because in Forge the Universe, the Death Bone Sun was trembling slightly. It should be resonating with the Jade Girl on the other side of the Death Valley. Han Fei thought to himself, since I'm here, I'll go and take a look after the blood pool later. I have to keep a secret. If I can't deal with the mummy, I can consider the Jade Girl. Could he ask her to come out and help him in battle? Chapter 1570. When Han Fei arrived at the Mountain of the Dragon Origin Chi, he found that this place had become a paradise for beasts. Yes, this was probably the only place where beasts existed except the 10,000 Beast Island. A few years ago, when this place collapsed, the Dragon Origin Chi escaped from here. Countless beasts perished in that collapse. However, there were also countless creatures who absorbed the Dragon Origin Chi. Therefore, when Han Fei came here today, he found that there were peak-level law enforcers and even explorers everywhere. There were as many as 50,000 of them. Of course, there must be no Dragon Origin Chi here now. It should have been swallowed by these tens of thousands of beasts. In the sky above this collapsed land, there were space cracks everywhere. The beasts here only cultivated in safe places and never approached the space cracks. Han Fei pondered and asked, Old Yuan, can you still find the small world below? The old turtle snorted. Don't you have the nautical instrument? Why are you asking me? That small world has obviously disintegrated. The only thing you can try is to find. Is there a fragment of that small world? Don't forget. Last time I saw the giant gate, there was an emperor guarding it. Now the gate and the statue of the emperor are gone. Han Fei nodded slightly. In his memory, the gate should be at the end of the blood pool. However, at this moment, the blood pool had dried up and Han Fei didn't see the giant gate. Han Fei found the right place, stretched out his hand, and a huge knife light appeared in the air. Chilla. The collapsed mountain was cut by Han Fei again. A huge knife mark more than 3,000 meters long cut more than 300 meters deep in the place in Han Fei's memory. As soon as Han Fei's knife light appeared, all the beasts fled. Here, there was a super strong master that they couldn't defeat. Of course, the farther away they stayed, the better. Han Fei didn't care about them at all. In the future, if humans had a chance to cooperate with the beasts, they could find someone to take these beasts away. Huh? No, there's no trace at all. Old Yuan, did I remember the wrong place? The old turtle said, I remember this place too. Perhaps, the door you saw, it itself is the entrance to a world. Now, even the world has collapsed, how can there still be an entrance? Han Fei nodded slightly. Now that things had come to this point, this was the only explanation. Han Fei immediately secretly used the nautical panorama. The needle spun rapidly and soon pointed to a place less than 100 miles to the west, where a mountain had collapsed. Han Fei's eyes lit up. After a few steps, Han Fei came to the place where the mountain collapsed. He glanced around, only to see that Han Fei suddenly drew his knife and attacked. A spatial crack appeared. Within the spatial crack, a large piece of dragon bone was revealed. Ha, there really is one. Against the turbulence of the void, Han Fei forced his way into this space. When he entered, he found that there was less than 3,000 meters of space left, and only 18 scattered dragon bones. Indeed, this small world had collapsed a long time ago, and it was no longer stable. Therefore, after Han Fei quickly stuffed these dragon bones into the sun-moon shell, the small world exploded. As a result, before Han Fei had time to retreat, he was already covered in wounds. Tens of thousands of spatial cracks cut Han Fei's body. Even though Han Fei immediately protected himself with a Taoist pattern array, he still couldn't resist it. If it were an ordinary person, even an advanced venerable, he would definitely be hacked to death by such crazy spatial slashes. However, who was Han Fei? He had already cultivated an indestructible golden body. This also gave Han Fei the capital to fight against the void chasm brainlessly. Son of a bitch, it seems that even if there are fragments of the small world, I can't just enter this damn place. Han Fei appeared above this mountain and cast a holy light technique on himself. The flesh that had been cut was rapidly recovering. Ha! You can even find fragments of the small world from here. Suddenly, Han Fei turned his head. He grabbed at the void, and a knife light condensed from a spatial crack slashed out. Ha! What kind of technique is this? Han Fei took a closer look, only to find that the newcomer turned out to be a child who looked only 7 or 8 years old. This child was still bald, but he was wearing a black robe, and his lips were black, and there was a black dot tattooed between his eyebrows. The child stretched out his hand, and a huge black shield blocked the attack. Clang! A loud explosion and shockwaves rang out on the island, causing the surrounding space to crack once more. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Golden boy. Han Fei reacted on the spot just now. Han Fei didn't realize that someone was coming. So, without thinking too much, he just slashed with a backhand. However, even this backhand slash was not something that anyone could take. If a mid-level venerable took it, he would be cut into 2 pieces if he was not careful. Han Fei asked in his heart, Old Yuan, why didn't you inform me? The old turtle said, I didn't expect that there would be someone here. Besides, this person's whereabouts are mysterious, and his strength is at least half a king. Although in my opinion, half a king is almost the same as a false king. Maybe this is a false king of the human race. Han Fei's heart trembled. The old turtle's evaluation was a bit too high. Of course, Han Fei knew that there must be a false king in the immortal city. However, it never occurred to him that the false king of the human race turned out to be this golden boy who seemed to be only 7 or 8 years old. The golden boy asked calmly, Are you Han Fei? After all, he knew that he was facing a being that was likely to be a false king. Han Fei was more or less uneasy. Han Fei nodded. That's me. The golden boy smiled casually and said in a childish voice, When the Forbidden Island disappeared, I wasn't there. When I came back from the Forbidden Island, this place had already collapsed. At that time, I discovered that there was a mysterious power hiding next to my house. Han Fei didn't feel the slightest threat from the golden boy. Since the golden boy knew that he was Han Fei and on the immortal city's side, he wouldn't attack him. After all, the golden boy was on the human race's side. So, Han Fei relaxed and asked, Then what? The golden boy said casually, Most of the fragments of the small world have already disappeared in the void turbulence. Although I also found a few fragments, these dragon bones are useless. Until you came to look for the dragon bones. Han Fei was confused. You know about dragon bones? The golden boy explained, Many people have entered the grassland on the island. Not all of them died there. At least, we learned about the existence of dragons. However, in the long history of the cage, such a creature had never appeared even once. I don't know much about this race, but you should know how to use the dragon bones, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to look for them. Han Fei was amused. These bones are useless to me. However, I'm not sure about the grassland. Oh. Han Fei wondered if the golden boy had ever seen a desolate grave. If this golden boy lived on the Forbidden Island, he should have been there before. The golden boy said, That's what I'm curious about. You are the only person I've seen who can enter the grassland at will. I guess it's not your first time there, is it? For example, when you were in the outside world, you asked the jade girl for the death bone Sun. Han Fei immediately retorted, Hey. Let's talk about it. She gave it to me, not what I asked for. The golden boy slightly shrugged and didn't argue with Han Fei. He just said casually, The death bone Sun is not a very good thing, and its use is limited. However, since I've given it to you, I won't ask for it again. I'm just curious about what's in the grassland. Han Fei asked in confusion, You've never been there. Jean Tong said with a smile, not everyone can enter that prairie. Not everyone who enters can come out alive, especially venerable ones. The golden boy grabbed a few sun moon shells and said, there are 63 dragon bones here. For me, or for human cultivators, they are useless. In exchange, you tell me the secrets of the grassland, and these dragon bones are yours. Han Fei's heart did a flip. According to what he saw, the 60 dragon bones equaled more than 60 strands of chaotic energy. Apart from the chaotic energy, there might be a mysterious power unique to the dragon bones. It was a good deal. At least, Han Fei was almost certain that even if he told the golden boy what was on the grassland, the golden boy wouldn't be able to defeat that figure. However, Han Fei still asked, are you a half-king or a false king? The golden boy was briefly stunned and then smiled casually. Why do you ask? Han Fei said, whether you are a half-king or a false king, you are not as strong as the one on the grassland. The one on the grassland is at least a king. Huh? The golden boy's pupils constricted. That's impossible. There is no king in the cage. How can there be a king-level expert? Han Fei said with a smile, since you know the news about the dragon race, you must have seen it on this island, right? Then, you should know that there was once a strong expert who fought the dragon in the wild. The dragon died, but that person seems to be still alive. The golden boy was silent for a moment. I always thought that the secret of the cage was hidden on the grassland. But now, it seems to be different from my guess. Han Fei thought to himself, you're right. I think so too. That deranged guy can freely enter and exit the wall of death on this island. It would be strange if he didn't have the wall of death, which is the secret of the cage, on him. Han Fei said, is the dragon bone in your hand mine now? The golden boy didn't respond but asked back, so, that person is a human being? Han Fei nodded. Yes. The golden boy asked, since he needs the dragon bone, why can't I give it to him in exchange for information? Han Fei was amused and opened his hands. Feel free. The golden boy looked at Han Fei for a while and eventually said, fine. If anything happens to me, the immortal city will be doomed. You claim to be a human king. I'll leave this secret to you.